anoint learn and run to you. I have no choice. I'm choosing to trust in love over logic, following the sound of your heart. I am hearing you above the pain, remembering your touch on my skin. Choosing to trust in love over cloud, drawing a deep breath again. Choosing to trust in love over cloud, drawing a deep breath again. That's just to let you know I'm here, actually, and tribute to my friend Michael Jackson, who often started concerts that way. I'm not going to sing for you, as far as I know, this time, but I want you to feel some energy, because we're going to talk about a lot of things that are highly intellectual and logical, left brain. You know, I think a lot of you are here because you want to know about resistance and immunity, things like that. But what's underneath all of this stuff is an energy. It's not even words. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep myself down to the word level as much as I can. But, you know, I'm talking about things that can't really be put in words. So just be warned about that. Also, just to make the authorities happy with us, well, they're not going to be happy, but happier. We're not going to give medical advice. We're not going to diagnose anything or offer to treat anything or say anything about anything. This is just information. You can consider it entertainment if you feel like it. You can agree never to do anything that I suggest. You know, whatever makes our rulers happy. I just want to make sure that's clear. If you need medical advice of any kind, or medical procedures, or drugs, or surgery, you need organs cut out or body parts cut off, or radiation or chemotherapy, or any advanced gifts of modern science, please go to your doctor immediately. This is just a show about sharing information, and I have a lot of things blended together here that I'm going to share with you. The ulterior motive is to give this to you. There's nothing else behind it. We're not going to do the usual modern protocol of free class followed by, you know, some really expensive thing that you're going to buy. I'm not saying I won't ever do that, but we're not doing that now. This is a free class in order to be a free class. That's it. So if you have any interest in that, you might want to hang around. Other than, I have to warn you, some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about is quite counterintuitive. You know, you may have to relax your existing beliefs a little bit in order to get anything out of it, but I'm not asking you to agree with me. This is not an argument or a debate or saying one belief or idea is right and the other is wrong. This is just sheerly sharing my experience. I'll tell you a little bit about where it comes from. Doug just let me know that we have the government seal of approval on this class, so you should be very proud to be in a class like that, because he tried to let a few people know about this. You're fortunate. You're among the very tiny group that even knows this class is going on or know that we exist. And Doug tried to boost it. You know, you can do that on Facebook if you give them a few dollars, and they'll let more people know, and they just cut us off. They wouldn't do that. I think they probably read Doug's graphic about what we're going to talk about, and it was unacceptable. So that's great. You know, as Alex Jones often points out correctly, that flack means you're over the target or at least getting closer to it. So that's it. We really appreciate our leaders letting us know that. I'm going to give you a little bit bigger picture understanding so that you get an answer to these questions about real immunity and real resistance to environmental insults that are intentionally released all around us right now. And I got to tell you a little bit about my background, my ulterior motives, and we'll go through that quickly. I'm going to go through as much as I can quickly and, just see if there's anything that you want to know more about or if you have questions or things like that. But I got to give you a little bit of introduction just to put some context onto it. So I was very, in my particular case, I was pretty bright and aware of what I was doing here until I was about two years old, which is a long time ago, because I'm what they call an older person right now. And I pretty much forgot everything after that. I got diverted into aspects of fear, unfortunately, through school and parents and, people who are suffering from that, which are all around us, really. It's quite contagious. And, was thinking there's got to be something wrong with me because I wasn't fitting into the usual crowd in elementary school. And, I had other interests that I wanted to pursue even at that time. By the time I was about 4.5, I decided whatever else happens, I want to find out what is going on here, meaning physical life on Earth. And I didn't want a belief system to, answer the question so I wouldn't have to think about it and make it convenient. I didn't want a group or a label or to worry about whether anybody in the world agreed with me or not. I just wanted to know what was going on. And I had already been, dropped the clarity I originally had by the time I was 4.5. But I kept searching, and I actually was pretty unconscious of health stuff until I was about 14 or 15. And then, the results of just a very unconscious lifestyle started to catch up with me. And it happens at different ages to different people because of the strength of your inherent constitution, your genetics and all that. And it happened to me around 14 or 15. And so then I started really looking into it. I was suffering from the results of modern advanced medical science, drugs and surgery and all kinds of nasty stuff. And I realized, fortunately, I don't know how, but it came to me that I was going to be killed by all of this advanced therapy. And I dumped it back in the mid-60s and got away and never went back and started a long course of study that started with a great teacher, a healer named Dr. Jim J.C. McKimmie, M-C or M-A-C-K-I-M-M-I-E in San Carlos in California. He was incredible. And he was a chiropractor officially, but he almost never touched anybody. He was expert at adjusting osseous adjustments of bones and really helped a lot of people with that. But his main contribution was what he learned to do without touching the patient. They just lie on the chiropractic table. He'd be a couple of feet away, and things would start changing. I mean, really obvious things would start changing. And, depending on the individual case, some people would walk out of there comfortable when they had come in on crutches or wheelchairs. And he got pretty well known. And he wrote a neat book called Presence of Angels. You might want to have paper and pencil with you, because I'm going to share a lot of things that come up during our talk that might be worth your looking into if you want to study a little bit. That's a good book. So anyway, I went through a period of study that started then, and it's never stopped. And during about 5 decades of searching and investigating and my own experiments, doing everything I learned on my own body, talking to others who had done it, visiting healers and doctors all over the world, and where I lived in California, Dr. Jensen. And I met Ann Wigmore in the 60s when I was at the university, second time that I was at the university in the 60s. And I wanted to find out what was going on. I started experimenting with vegetarian diets and whole foods, and not the food store, but whole foods like Matt Monarch talks about. another inspiring teacher that you might want to look up on YouTube is Matt Monarch, rawfoodworld.com. A lot of great videos. And he tells people about whole foods a lot, because processed foods, you know, the kind that you buy in a box or a can or something that have a paragraph of ingredients, are devastating to health on all levels. And he explains that in a really good video. I think it's called something like Why Cooked Food is Better Than Raw Food, even though he's been on raw food for like 22 years or something. So that's pretty neat to look up and watch. Anyway, I started learning about meditation. This was in 1970, and whole food vegetarian diet about the same time, on and off raw. Although I haven't been absolutely 100% raw food with no cooked food experiments, except for the last 5 years or so. But, you know, a lot of intermittent in the time before that. And then in the last 20 years, I was also investigating the political and economic power structure that is running the U.S. and most of the world right now. I guess it's kind of obvious why, you know, we got the government seal of approval on this class, because we're going to talk about a lot of forbidden information that you're not ever supposed to hear about or know about, and certainly not use. But I was invisible and quiet for 50 years, and then I got asked to do a radio show. I probably still would be invisible except for that, and I felt like I couldn't say no to it, so I ended up doing that and became Lost Arts Radio. And that is going on every week. In case you don't know about it, you can find it at exactly the same location, blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio. I'll give you the 2 times every week that it is, in case you have any interest in that. On the Sunday night show, that's our main one, we have incredible guests that are in all areas that impact health, which, by the way, is almost everything. And that one is at 6 o'clock, same time as this class, 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern on Sunday nights. It's been on every week for quite a while now. And all the archives are available at lostartsradio.com. And then we've got the main site of our nonprofit research institute, which is IRS approved in case anybody ever wants to support it. Donations are tax deductible. That is lostartsresearchinstitute.org, O-R-G. And then we have a Saturday morning free class that is question and answer and discussion. It's a little bit like this, but it's interactive. And that is 8 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, 11 o'clock Eastern on Saturday mornings, if you ever want to drop in and visit us there. And you can call in and talk and ask questions and learn some more interesting things if you listen to this and participate in this class tonight and you have further interest in going deeper. So anyway, I was just saying that in the last 20 years of the research that I did, it included looking into the economic and political power structure, what they're doing, how long they've had what they're doing in mind. This is a very long-term project they're involved in, what their agendas are, what they plan on doing to us in the near future. I got into that in great depth, and I'm not going to say too much detail about that, but I ran into some direct sources of information, just put it that way. And I can say this, after that much talking, and studying and looking at it, is that the conspiracy theorists are completely wrong. And you might be shocked to hear me say that, but I mean it. And the reason I mean it is it's much deeper and more highly organized and coordinated than most of them can imagine. And that's why we are trained to believe that there is no such thing as conspiracy, except, of course, for bank robbers that you see in the old Popeye cartoons sitting around until Popeye comes and they all, get beat up and fall in the corner with X's on their eyes. That's the only conspiracy that's real. Nothing else could ever happen like that. The people that intend bad things for us would never cooperate together to do anything to us. So just, move along and there's nothing to see. So the reason that you're told that is because the conspiracy is so deep and so all-pervasive that it's difficult to grasp. Anyway, so I ended up in those 5 decades coming across a lot of things that you're never supposed to discover if possible. And the first set of dots that I connected, we will get to the reason for this class. I'm trying to be brief here. I'm sorry I'm taking so long, but hopefully I'm not putting anybody to sleep. I just got to tell you this stuff first a little bit. The first set of dots was about general health, age, how to reverse aging. This is real, by the way. How to prevent and reverse degenerative disease and even infectious disease. This is probably some of what we're absolutely not supposed to talk about, and you're not even supposed to be interested in it. You're just supposed to go get drugs. And I'm not telling you not to go get all the drugs and not to have your organs cut out or whatever is recommended for you. Okay, this is not medical advice. Hopefully that's clear, and we're going to have it recorded, so if anybody has a question on that, we can prove that, we're letting you know about that. But I wanted to know what alternatives to that poisoning approach had been known in the past, and what alternatives were known now that actually worked and that might even be usable in the current unfriendly, to say the least, environment that we're all trying to deal with. So, anyway, with that in mind, those 2 sets of dots that were connected, I became kind of an undesirable individual to have running around talking to people. And up to now, I've been really cooperative. I haven't talked to very many people at all. I just do my work all the time. I have very little interaction with the outside world, except for that, because I'm too wrapped up in what I'm carrying further here. And my ulterior motive in all of it, I know now in detail where we're being led, where our rulers are taking us, and I don't want to see that happen, only for the reason that I don't like suffering that can be avoided. I don't like suffering that can't be avoided. I just understand, why some of it has to happen, and not all of it at this point has to happen, because we still have something called free will. But it really doesn't mean much unless we wake up. And waking up, by the way, does not mean being able to list all the bad things that are happening. That might be intellectual awareness. Waking up is a lot more than that. And it's on an entirely different level. And I don't even know if I can explain it very well, because it doesn't fit in language conveniently. Waking up is really about becoming self-aware. And the reason that that's what it is because of what's hidden inside each one of us that we're not supposed to know about. And I just, I skipped over one thing that I wanted to say, that, when I mentioned that you're not supposed to know about what we're going to go into tonight. A lot of people have been killed because of it, because of trying to make it known. And so, in a way, it's really dumb to try to talk to you about this, especially since it was specifically because I know what I'm talking about. But I don't feel comfortable being quiet. So you're going to be the few that hear it, and hopefully more will afterwards, and we'll take it as far as we can. It has nothing to do with me, because there are way better, wiser, more advanced people in this than I am. And I'm sorry they can't be here, physically anyway, with you tonight. But, I'm what we've got for the moment, so I've just got to, in the time that we've got, I've got to give you what I have so you can take it further and use your own creativity and inner guidance to see what you need to do. And I'm just suggesting that the first step is getting yourself in really good shape, because that makes it easier to even become aware of what you're doing here and to have a chance to do it in whatever is the very limited time that we have left. And I don't know how much that is. By the way, I'm not advocating worry or fear at all. None. Zero. So you might say, well, how is that that makes no sense, because he's talking about all these terrible things, and I suspect he's going to talk about much worse ones, which is probably true. But we've picked up a lot of programming, a lot of mental and emotional programming. And most of us don't even know what we believe. We know what we think we believe. We know we can recite what we think we believe. That's mostly on an intellectual level. And it might be your own. It might come from a group that you joined. It might be anything. But what you really believe can be decoded from how you feel at a really deep level. That's where your beliefs live. It's subconscious for most people, and it's maybe completely unconscious. So one of the little things you have to do, not instantaneously, because I don't know how to do that, but over time, is you have to learn how to make the subconscious conscious. And that will expose the programs that are controlling your life. And then you have to redirect them consciously, which you can do. And once you learn to do that, your barriers just dissolve. So this is not just going to be eat this food and don't eat that food. Okay, because that's not the whole story at all. The other thing is that, I was going to say I don't believe in fear or worry. Well, the way to do that is exactly what we're talking about. You have to become aware of those fear programs and those worry programs that you're carrying around, and you're playing in your mind nonstop, and you don't even know it because you're so used to it. You got to be willing to turn up the sound on those. Don't worry about outside of you so much, who's right and who's wrong. Look inside yourself, because that's where your massive power source is going to come from. That's where your ultimate knowing and information and judgment ability to tell what's right for you and what's not, it's going to be inside. And, that can be kind of scary originally for people because they're not used to it. They're looking for the best authority on the outside that they can say, see, that person or that group or that government agency says this is right, so therefore I know it's right. Well, if you want to do that, that's the easiest thing, but it's not really reliable because, government agencies might occasionally tell the truth by mistake or to have some, work on some agenda that they're doing, but it's not usually what they do. So inside yourself is a reliable guidance system, and every single person has it. But it's almost, for all of us, completely dormant at the moment. And our current system of education is not intended to wake it up. It's intended ultimately to make you think that you don't know anything and you have to rely on experts to tell you everything to do in your life, which fits perfectly with the agenda of your rulers who intend to control your life. And if we let that keep going, we're not going to like the result very much. So where we are now, in fact, that we have let that keep going, and I don't mean that we should have stopped it by force. I'm not advocating any kind of force or violence unless it's in self-defense or defense of others, and that you have no choice. Even an animal has the obligation and right for self-defense and defense of its family and the other ones close to it. And we have the same thing. But that does not mean to go around thinking about that all the time and brewing violence in your mind. That's counterproductive because it blocks your own consciousness. And I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but I have to say it. You've got to become really aware of subtle things that affect your state of consciousness. And we don't even mostly know what that means. I'm going to try to talk about it a little bit. It's critically important. And what you do inside yourself is just about everything that's going to determine what happens from this moment for the rest of your life. And there are possibilities that go beyond what most of us are imagining right now. But in any case, we haven't gotten there yet, most of us. And as a result, the people who are diligently working on our enslavement and extermination, which, I'm sorry, that's the bottom line of what our rulers are doing right now worldwide. Okay, with a few exceptions, but for the most part, especially in Western countries, this is what it is. What their programs that are deadly are not scientific oversights. They're not confusion. They're not because some congressional body is incompetent. They're not anything like that. They're exactly intentional, and they know at the top levels, they know precisely where they're going with it, which personally I would rather see not get completed. So if you had an interest in this class, you're hearing it live or as an archive, a lot of the people were interested because they're aware of chemtrails, they're aware of EMF pollution, they know about smart meters, they know about cell towers, they know about all the fact that all the nuclear plants are leaking, that the Earth is now circled by a cloud of radioactivity that's not only hurting us, it's actually hurting the metal in airplanes. I mean, it's gotten to that point. Wigner effect or something along that line makes metal crystallize, but it's not good for us either. And they're aware, some of you guys are aware of the reality behind drugs and vaccines, chemical agriculture, and it's not just pesticides, it's chemical fertilizers that lead to the use of pesticides. And that's not widely understood, but it's true. And I can tell you why in detail if anybody wants to go into that. And they're aware of the poison products that we use, like cosmetics and makeup, lipstick with lead in it, and all kinds of ridiculous stuff that we shouldn't have to worry about. The fact that we've got clothes that you're probably wearing right now, unless you're listening nude, which is fine. But most of our clothes are from cotton that's grown soaked with pesticide, glyphosate, GMO cotton. There's a reason that the biotech industry made cotton one of the first major GMOs in America. Most of the cotton in the whole country is now GMO, and we're wearing it like a skin patch because either we don't know about it or we don't know there's an alternative, which is organic cotton that's made into clothes or other fibers that are organic. Or we do know about it, and we checked on it, and it's really expensive, which I did check on it. Some of it is like 10 times the price of poisoned clothing. And I call it poisoned clothing intentionally. That's not to be dramatic. When you go in Whole Foods or another natural food store, and they have food labeled conventional, it's not conventional, it's poisoned. Okay, that should not be a convention. So I think we get misled by words a lot. And in general, you know, we've got all of these technologies that have been given to us that are designed to be harmful. All the EMF and Wi-Fi technologies. Barry Trower has been on our show numerous times on the Sunday night show and explained in great detail, even though most people still can't believe it, that Wi-Fi technology is not good for you. Your body runs on a very delicate electrical system, among other things. And it's not supposed to have this really severe external radiation just smashing through it. That's not a good thing. So a lot of the people who heard about this show, which as far as I know is a one-time thing right now, although, you know, maybe we'll do another one in the future, we'll see. But so the question with most of the people who are interested in the show is, well, so what do you do? Because just being aware of these problems only makes you upset, and that makes your health worse. So that's pretty dumb, right? I mean, just going through the problems over and over and over and over again, it has all kinds of bad effects if you stop there. It can make you really hate the people who, because they don't really know what they're doing, you know, you've heard it said, forgive them because they know not what they do. Well, even the ones who really think they know what they do, they don't really know what they do. Because if they did, they'd drop it instantly. And the reason they would do that is that there's a deep law of nature that supersedes or precedes by huge amounts of time any belief system. philosophy, religion, whatever. And because it's part of the design of nature, and it says, whatever you do to somebody else, knowingly or unknowingly, but especially knowingly, or do for them, comes back to you multiplied. And it's totally irrelevant whether you believe it or not. It's working all the time. So if the people who are doing all the destructive things knew about that, they would drop it instantly. And in that sense, they really don't know. So just going through the list of bad things is not good for you unless you learn what to do to improve the situation. And the class tonight was supposed to be about resistance to these things that are being done to us. And where does real immunity come from? Immunity to all these things, nuclear radiation, chemtrail fallout, EMF pollution, even infectious disease. You know, if vaccines are a total fraud, and we've said many, many times that that's the case, not just me, because nobody cares whether I think that, but doctors who have looked into it and risked their license and their lives have shown that vaccines have never prevented a single disease. It's not like you have to do a pro and con analysis. And, you know, as Doug knows, this is probably why Facebook wouldn't promote this class for us, because we're just going to tell the truth. Vaccines have never prevented a disease. They always took a disease that was on the way down from sanitation and hygiene and other things. And at the very end, when it was almost gone, they started vaccines, which often made it worse in a little blip at that point. But then they claimed that the vaccine was the reason for the disease going away. You can see it in Dr. Suzanne Humphrey's book, Dissolving Illusions. You should write that one down and read it if you ever have time, or read parts of it. Dr. Suzanne Humphrey's Dissolving Illusions. If you miss any of these references, this is going to be available as an archive for anybody to share, and I hope you'll share it if you think that it would be of interest to other people. Anyway, Suzanne Humphreys, this great lady, lost her medical license for telling the truth about vaccines and is chased out of countries where she's going to talk, like Australia, and bomb threats at her talks. I mean, it's pretty intense. And because she's a medical doctor, it might look bad for her to be saying these things. Dr. Tim O'Shea is another really good one who's wrote a book that you should look at called, if you're interested in the subject anyway of vaccination, it's called Vaccination is Not Immunization. That was kind of a deceptive use of words to start calling vaccination immunization, because it's no such thing. And he points out why. And the whole antibody theory of why vaccination is supposedly settled, you know, science has never settled, that's total nonsense. But why it's been proven in science is because antibodies increase. Well, there's no correlation at all between the presence of antibodies and immunity from disease. People with a lot of antibodies in their blood often get the disease right away. A lot of times they get it right from the shot that's supposed to prevent it. And a lot of times people with no antibodies that are detectable have great immunity. And yet that's the whole justification scientifically for why this is the most wonderful contribution of modern science in the world. So, and then you add to all these physical insults the fact that the rulers are step by step intentionally destroying the economy, or what's left of it. And they've gone a long way since they put in this private central bank that's mostly foreign owned called the Federal Reserve. Euphemistically, it's not federal and it's not using any reserves. Since then, the paper dollar has lost about 98% of its purchasing power, and they intend to eliminate the rest of it. This is one reason, as a side note, that we finally decided, okay, we'll be involved in the carrot bar system, which is where you can buy little tiny bars of gold, and even though they're more per ounce than the big ones, they're convenient in a really bad situation. If it's a severe depression or something, they'd be very useful. So if you have any interest in that, and it gives a few dollars to the Lost Arts Project, you can find the Carrot Bars banner on our site, lostartsradio.com. But that's a side note. You know, the main thing is the economic collapse is being done intentionally. It's intended to go the rest of the way, where you will be 100% dependent on government handouts, drugged food, and on top of that, they're adding waves of immigration from terrorist people right now, all over Western Europe, which is being destroyed by it, and also it's starting in the U.S., and that is intended to disintegrate society so that everybody begs for complete government control. It's a pretty brilliant plan, actually, and it's worked many times in history, but now they've got the technology to make it much more universal. It's, there's no obvious place to run away, like when there were tyrannies in England and other places and people ran to the U.S. I don't know what you could do that's analogous to that now, because this is a global problem. So when I talk about and list these things that are issues, I'm not doing that to make you upset. I'm saying try what I said, split your attention. I want your attention on this to be only analytical, left brain, intellectual, logical, not getting emotionally upset. And the only way you can possibly do that, and I can tell you it takes serious practice, which I recommend that you do, is keep your emotional connection, which is like an emotional level that you're eating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whatever your emotional connection inside is on, that's what you're eating. That's the energy you're eating right this minute. And it affects you faster than physical food. So don't be sloppy with that anymore. Leave your attention on whatever's most beautiful, uplifting, and inspiring for you, and never let it go, no matter what happens. And we don't know what's going to happen. But I'm telling you, that food supply, don't give it up, because it doesn't come from the grocery store. Nobody can cut it off except your sloppiness. So keep it where you want it. So anyway, with that situation around us that you're looking at intellectually while you keep your emotional state connected to what you love, so that we can do the rest of this class without leaving you upset, which is the opposite of what I want to do. So because we're surrounded by these things, and strategically this is the situation, and it's planned to get much more intense, we need at minimum to be as close to our top potential, health status and efficiency as we can possibly be. And this is where the question of immunity and resistance to all these bad things comes in. The other thing is, if you get to that state of efficiency and optimum, or close to optimum health, as much as you can in the environment that we're in, this opens up a whole other level that's almost never, but it's connected to why I'm doing this. And it's not about, making you so you can do 12 marathons when you're 95, although it's okay if you want to do that. It's about what happens after you get your body clear, where you don't have to worry about aging, you don't have to worry about infectious disease, you don't have to worry about degenerative disease. You're in EMF pollution and you're aware of it, but it's not making you feel bad. And the same with the nuclear pollution and the chemtrail pollution. And I can tell you absolutely for sure, at least at this point in the assaults against us, it's possible to be in the middle of all those things and feel really, really good. Very high energy. That's why I'm talking to you tonight. And it's not something I read. I've been doing this stuff since the beginning. So, those forgotten abilities that can open up, that become easier to access if you get rid of these little issues of physical challenges in your health, that's what I want us to get to. And that's the meaning of why we call this Lost Arts Radio. Because it's not just lost, it's totally forgotten. And it has nothing to do with joining any groups or telling anybody that you have a certain label on you. It has to do with actually reconnecting to something that you've been carrying around forever, literally. So now you know my ulterior motive. It's not the usual thing where you get a free class and at the end they say, oh, and we have a special offer for you that's usually $11,500, but tonight only it's $49.95. we're not doing that right now. This is just to share some things with you while we still can. And I don't know how long we still can, because they're already shutting off our advertising and stuff. So anyway, we're going to lay out the basics, not just for the maximum resistance to chemtrails, flu, what so-called, the microwave pollution, nuclear fallout, infectious disease, and etc., but also the basics to get toward maximum health on all levels. And that's not just physical. That's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever level you're looking at. Because if you do that, it starts opening up things you didn't know you had. That's what I want to get for you. And of course, you're going to get it for yourself. It's not me. Compared to other people who really have advanced far in this stuff, I know nothing. And I'm really sorry it's only me talking to you tonight, but this is what we got for the moment. And so I've got to give you the best that I've been able to find so far. And the secrets, the suppressed information that I'm going to give you tonight is not about a miracle drug, so don't bother waiting for that. It's not about a miracle herb that's going to be natural and it's going to fix everything. But it's the basics that would be in the owner's manual if you had the owner's manual for your body. And we do. We just don't know how to read it, most of us. And these are the basics that have been taught for more than thousands of years. If you want to see an example of it, you might want to write this down if you don't already know about it. Look at Volume 1 specifically of the Essene Gospel of Peace. And this is not a religious book. This is an incredible document that I ran into in 1975. And I've been working with what's in it for the last 40 years plus, adapting it to use in present conditions. And this is kind of what I'm going to be talking to you about tonight, but I'm not memorizing it from the book. That book triggered memory that I have, and that's where I'm coming from. If I actually told you where this is all coming from, you'd probably just totally not believe me anyway, so we're not going to go into those details. I'm just going to tell you what's in it. So these basics that, if you really do them, lead to higher and higher levels of resistance and immunity, so you can walk through this garbage that's being dumped all around us and not be made sick and unconscious by it. These are the basics that have been taught from the beginning, such as air, which I know it's not clean anymore, but air. We still need air. I haven't found a substitute for that yet, really. Sunlight. And you know sunlight is good if you trust your government, because they would never tell you to avoid sunlight at all costs unless it was essential for life. And they're telling us right now that it causes cancer, that you need carcinogenic sunscreens to keep safe, that you should wear clothes all over, hats, dark glasses, which also make you look cool. And this is how to be really healthy. That's your clue that you need sun exposure on as much of your body and your eyes as you can possibly do. I'm not telling you what to do now, okay, just in case anybody's wondering, or our monitors are thinking, aha, I just told them to do this stuff. That's the end of that. But I'm not. I'm just conveying what was taught a long time ago by teachers who understood that there's no division between mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. All these things go together. And the new education system that we've got is to make you forget that. And so they make you into specialists. And the scientists who get out of the end of it, and most of the doctors, except the really brilliant ones that are helping us, most of the scientists who graduate out of higher education are so specialized they have no idea of the context or real meaning of what they're an expert in. And they're a perfect candidate for being made into a tool of the power structure. And they can be doing terrible things and thinking that they're serving humanity. And I don't want you to do that. I would rather you would understand the bigger picture in everything that you do. Never fall for the specialization trap. You can have a specialty in what you do, to make money or to do your work, but in your understanding, you need as big of a picture as you can get. So again, these basics: air, sun, water is really critical. Most of our water supplies have been poisoned in the cities now because those at the top of the power structure know that clean water is absolutely essential, so they don't let us have it. Earth energy is essential. You might be remembering they used to call these elements, right? Air, sun, water, earth, ether. 4 or 5 major elements, and they sometimes called them angels a long time ago. And that's not because they were stupid and superstitious. That had deep meaning, which we might get into it. Think about whether we want to go that far or not. But the earth energy you need from grounding, and that Dr. Laura Conover, you might want to look her up. She's done a lot with grounding. So has David Wolf. David Wolf actually did a blood test demonstration of people grounded to the earth through, that means your bare skin touching the earth, either walking barefoot, which you should do like for an hour a day somewhere if you can, but even a few minutes affects your blood. And after an hour of being grounded, the blood sample that they took from these people before and after was completely different. The way the red blood cells stuck together, they weren't all clumped up and misshapen. They became separated and round and healthy, and in other words, easy to squeeze through tight capillaries and things without getting blocked. And this was just from touching the earth, which most people would never think of. And it's because there's something called the Schumann frequency in the earth, because the earth has a life energy in it. Even though that's being used as a scam by criminal organizations like the UN and other ones like that, the subtle thing about it is it's also 100% true. There's life everywhere. We don't have an inanimate environment at all. That's not the case. And even if that sounds unscientific, I'm talking to you from a different place here, and you might want to look into that at some point, and maybe we can talk about it more in the future. But grounding to the earth, that's why that matters. There are some people who say that there's so much destructive EMF and electrical energy going in, dirty electricity and stuff going into the earth, that the Schumann frequency is being disrupted, and that may be true, but it's like the air. We need it. You can't give it up because it's being corrupted. We got to get what we can of it as long as it exists. We have to keep breathing even though there are chemtrails and things in the air. Exercise is absolutely critical for immunity and resistance. Sorry if it's boring, but it's the truth. There's 3 kinds of exercise you need. They're called resistance exercise, aerobic exercise, and stretching exercise, and you need all of them. And you can find some forms that fit your situation. If you don't have use of your whole body, you can just exercise with the parts that you do have use of. There's always something you can do. Exercise your face muscles if you can't do anything else, but something, movement and muscle contraction is what moves the lymph system. And the lymph system in your body is critical for constant detoxification. And that's a life and death issue. The blood system has a heart connected to it that beats. And the lymph system doesn't have anything like that. The only way that it moves is muscle contraction. And that's one of many reasons that exercise is needed. Dr. Mercola is another place to get great free newsletters every day in your email that don't cost anything. And he's had a lot of great people on talking about exercise and how it's so critical, and it extends your life and it increases your immunity, makes you less susceptible to degeneration and disease and Alzheimer's and dementia and all this stuff. And it's just exercise. Doesn't sound like some incredible scientific breakthrough and miracle drug, because that's all fake. And it's the easy, lazy way that appeals to everybody. You don't do these things that take effort by grinding your teeth and approaching them with a stress attitude. You get into them because you learn how to relax. And that's where you can do your most powerful work. And it's an inner relaxation in which you stay wide, wide awake. That's a huge thing if you can grasp it and work on it. Sleep is another absolute essential. There may be people on a very high state of evolution that have gone beyond it, and that's probably the case with some. But for most of us, including me and everybody that I'm aware of, you need a certain amount of sleep, and you need to tune into how much that is. If you get less than your optimum amount of sleep, you're going to be less sharply focused. You're going to be more like a drunk person, not competent in what you're doing, more subject to fear, confusion, and all kinds of stuff. So you have to sleep, and sleep in a totally dark environment, and it's best if you can sleep at night. You know, they've said 10 to 2 is critical time. If you have no choice and you have to work all night, you just have to do your best and make it totally dark, or wear a blindfold if you have to when you sleep during the day. But if you can arrange it to sleep with the circadian rhythm and the sun, you know, natural sun cycles of the earth, it's better for you. And lastly, and possibly most important, as we mentioned once before, your immunity and your resistance to these things that you're supposed to think you can't do anything about is very closely connected to the programming and mental and emotional patterns that you're running subconsciously all the time. They're controlling a huge part of your life, and you're not told about that normally, and it's unconscious, so why would anybody even think or talk about it? But it's massively powerful, and it's not out of your reach. You can grasp this tool and this awareness, and you can learn to use it, and it's incredible. And one clue to help you know that it could be real is that the reason wireless, you know, cell tower and EMF and Wi-Fi pollution affects us is because our body runs on a very delicate electrical current. You know, most of it, just like most nutrients and most chemical reactions and all that, is completely unknown to so-called science at this point. The science always gets really proud of what it has just discovered, and then a certain time later it says, oh, well, that was all wrong. But now, what we found out this time, for sure, this is right, and it's all settled, and then that gets proven wrong. Most of reality is not known to science or even suspected at this point. And it's a constant learning process that we have to go through. So you got to become conscious of what these programs are saying. And you can start anytime you want. If you wanted to start this minute, the way to do it is to think, what am I thinking right now? And on the surface, that's pretty easy to answer. But there's something else you're thinking right under that. You know, did I remember to turn the water off? What's my wife or husband going to think about such and such when I come home? What happened to this friend of mine today? I mean, we've got multiple layers of ongoing thoughts, almost like dreams, going on all the time. And if you become aware of that, which costs you no money, your focus and your consciousness begin to get more powerful in a very good sense. And you can use them for all kinds of helpful things. So lifestyle choices, what you eat, drink, and wear, and etc. all day, has a massive effect on your susceptibility to EMF, chemtrails, nuclear power, diseases of all kinds. So it's not a matter of changing your lifestyle by force, because that doesn't work. If you try to force yourself to give up something that you like, sooner or later you're going to be back on it more than you were before. So really, you know, it comes down, as much as choices in lifestyle habits and food and everything, it comes down to psychological patterns that make you attached to different habits that you've got. And you're not going to break the habits successfully, permanently, until you identify what you feel about it and redirect the mental and emotional programs. So there's a continuum. That means like a line from one place to another place. And if you imagine this line, it's good to know about. It has to do with what you're eating every day. And on one end of it is what Matt Monarch and others call the standard American diet. this is directly related to the question of resistance to things like Wi-Fi and cell towers, etc. So on one end of this continuum is processed food, fast food, stuff out of the store that's got GMO ingredients, anything that's really not good for you. And I guess you could put completely poisoned water sources on that too, because most of the major cities have the water completely poisoned. And if you are drinking it, or if you're bathing in it with no filter on the water, then it's going right into your bloodstream. And as unpleasant as it is to have to think about that, I don't want you to feel bad about it. I just want you to be aware of it so that you can change it if you want to. So on that continuum is all the chemical garbage. I want to keep this G-rated, so it's not difficult. Mostly my language is really good, but sometimes if I get too enthusiastic about something, it might slip a little bit, and this has to go out on numerous channels. So if you talk to me later on the air too, keep the language nice for a G-rated program, no matter what we're talking about. So that's one end of the continuum, and it includes makeup that you're using that might have lead in it or other contaminated chemicals, stuff like that. And then as you move away from that end of the continuum or the line, what happens is you get away from the processed food to what's called whole food. You buy a head of organic cauliflower or something in the store and you cook it, you steam it. You don't deep fry it. And you just start getting toward more natural food the way that it comes out of the ground. I personally have learned to get a lot out of the use of raw milk, so I'm not vegan. And we'll talk more about that later if you want to, because this is a big point of confusion that a lot of the vegan people think milk is like one of the most terrible things you could ever eat or drink. But that's not exactly accurate, because the studies that they base that on are all done with milk coming from basically tortured animals that are chemicalized. They're eating GMO feed a lot of the time. They're being given shots of all kinds of horrible things. They're enclosed and crowded and living in feedlots. They live 3 years instead of 25. That's not milk. And drinking anything made from that is not a brilliant idea. That stuff is really harmful to the body in my experience. Not telling you to agree with me, I'm just giving you some things to think about. Whereas if you get milk from animals that are treated nicely like pets and they're having a good life and they live a long time and they're not killed as soon as they slow down giving milk because they've served people all their life, they don't deserve to be killed after that, regardless of business profit levels or anything. That's not ethical. And their babies aren't killed, especially the males, even in the humane dairies, are killed right away because they're not needed. You can't do that, because on a subtle level, everything that we do, remember, to others, and that includes animals, which are highly conscious, emotional beings, it comes back to us multiplied. So I agree with the vegans about not eating what's called meat, primarily for that reason, but also because we're not designed to be carnivores at all. And if you eat meat, it does, in my opinion, definitely compromise your immune system. We're not predators. We're not designed to be predators. Our gut is too long. The right balance of microorganisms in the gut doesn't include what the predators have. We don't have their teeth. We don't have their psychology. This is a huge part of it. That a real natural predator, a dog or a cat or a tiger or lion in their natural state, they really get excited about seeing their prey screaming and dying, and they like to rip it apart while it's still alive. There's nothing evil about that at all. That's what they're designed for. But if you see humans really getting into that, that's not exactly our normal state. So we're not carnivores, and if you were a carnivore, you would need to eat your meat as live food, ideally, like all the animals do. Not cooked, but fresh, still bloody, with all the organs and eyes and everything in it. And if possible, while the animal's still dying. That's not us. Okay, that's really, it's not a good idea to try to get to that. So, yeah, I agree with the vegans about that, but saturated fat turns out to be a really valuable thing health-wise. And we need cholesterol. In fact, the body even makes it in the liver. And the modern practice that's been thought of recently by the drug companies and believed by the medical industry that everybody needs to be put on statin drugs to lower their cholesterol is absolutely deadly, as has been pointed out by Dr. Glidden, Glidden. There's a great YouTube video by him about cholesterol. It's worth watching. Dr. McCullough's had numerous guests on. There's just all kinds of evidence that the liver doesn't produce cholesterol by mistake. You need it. Your brain is like 70% cholesterol, the solid part. There's essential cholesterol in your nerve sheaths, in your cell walls, and other parts of the body. And if you start taking a drug that paralyzes that function in the liver, this is not brilliant. And Dr. Rima Lebo points out that virtually all the modern medical drugs are what she calls enzyme poisons. It's not the way to health. And there's great misunderstanding of that. Now, movement along the continuum that we talked about, and we didn't talk about what's on the other end. I should say that first. As you get more into the whole natural foods, moving along it, then it gets lighter. It drops out the meat component. It drops out, of course, very early on anything that's not organic, because these days, if it's not organic, I don't care if it's certified organic, but if it's not really organic in how it's grown, then it's probably full of poison, and you do not need to be drinking poison in that form, even in parts per billion. In other words, tiny bits will hurt you. And if you have any interest in this immunity thing and real resistance to all of these environmental problems we're in the middle of, and you can't get rid of all the smart meters in your neighbors' houses or whatever, you don't need to be drinking poison and wondering why it's affecting you. Everything's connected. If you understand that, you're way ahead in figuring out all of this other stuff that we're talking about. So as you move along that continuum, you find that as your body gets cleaner, you need less food, and you're satisfied with less, and your taste changes completely. You start really enjoying simpler, more natural food. You start putting in more raw food, which is really where all the nutrition is. I'm sorry we've got thousands of years of customs and traditions built up around cooking and all the social stuff that goes with it, but the biological reality is that the raw food is where all the good nutrition is. And then if you gradually start adding it in, eventually, especially with the help of raw milk, if it's produced correctly, which is a big issue, most of the raw milk is not, then it becomes easy to live on raw food because you're getting the fat that your body needs. If you're not, most raw vegans eventually run into problems of being emaciated, getting cold, having no energy. And they try to overcome this with massive use of certain supplements, and some of them succeed. Matt Monarch has been 100% raw food for, 22 years or something along that line. Marcus Rothkranz seems to be doing great, although not for as long. And Dr. Gabriel Cousens has been raw food vegan diet for a very long time with judicious use of supplements, but it's working great for him. What I've found is that the addition of the raw milk, although you may have to drink it by itself, not combined with food, and digest it by itself, for me that's been amazingly helpful in a lot of different ways. And it makes me reminded that we need millions of new, small, organic family farms starting up everywhere right now. And some of those should be raising animals for milk in a way that is good for those animals. And that also produces organic manure that's great for gardens and farms. And, with the USDA movement toward GMO and just approving GMO everything as fast as they can, So you know where USDA stands on this stuff. They're not friendly. They're making it unsafe to use manure from most sources. So if you go to the garden center or something and you pick up a bag of regular manure that used to be at one point maybe relatively free of poison, I mean, not completely if it wasn't organic, but especially now, it's totally unsafe to use because the animals are being fed GMO feed and it goes right into the manure and it goes right into the soil microorganisms. You know, the power structure is attempting to irretrievably pollute the whole world beyond recall. It is what it looks like. They're not doing anything really subtly trying to make it better or anything like that. I'm just confused. Their intent is total destruction. And my interest is in seeing that reversed. And I would mention to the people monitoring us right now from inside the power structure, it's not in your interest either to see the environment destroyed or to see humanity destroyed, mainly because of this law of nature that what you do to someone else, no matter what you think, believe, or how much faith you have in your bosses, it comes back to you multiplied. So if you have any courage, you have to absorb that and consider it and do something along that line to make things better from people within the power structure of any kind, whether it's a vicious power structure that is political, religious, whatever, and your rulers tell you that you have to do bad things to other people to be a good member of your group. I would highly recommend thinking twice about that and considering all the good you could do from inside the system. So anyway, if you follow the continuum to the other end, it gets lighter and lighter, more natural, more raw, and then you just have to learn to listen to your own body about what and when to put in it. And your body will always tell you that one of the big secrets that you're not supposed to know is that your body is conscious, and every cell in the body is conscious, and it's communicating with you constantly. And it doesn't even matter whether you actually believe in this or not, it's happening. And this has massive implications for the possibilities of what you can do with your own health. You're getting guidance of such a high level on a constant basis, and the only reason it may not be helping you as much as it could right now is that you don't remember how to decode it. And we're going to talk about that. The other thing is that as you lighten what you're eating, in order to get past the cravings and addictions that everybody's stuck with from eating all this garbage before and having, you know, self-destructive thought patterns and believing that we're bad and we need to have authorities run our lives, and all this stuff is toxic on different levels. In order to get rid of that, and again, get your potential immunity to all of these environmental things that we're dealing with, you have to clean out your system and you have to clean out the cells. And if you're at least a few decades old, or even, you know, in this age, I mean, even the babies are being born toxic. So I guess that wasn't going to be the thing to say. But whatever age you are, there's a system to take these toxic residues out of your body. And it's not a magic pill. It was taught thousands of years ago. You can see it talked about in great detail in the book we mentioned, The Seen Gospel of Peace, that you can get free PDF. Just type it into a search engine. Volume 1 only. That's the one I'm talking about. Then what they taught, although they didn't have to deal with chemtrails and, you know, microwave garbage, they had, you know, people had made mistakes in eating. They spent their whole life drunk or whatever they did, different drugs or, you know, polluted food, whatever they had even then. The remedy was fasting every time. And this was taught at that time, a long time ago. It meant stop eating, just drink water until you've cleaned out what you need to remove in your body, and then start a better lifestyle after that. And after you do the cleansing and fasting, your taste is different. you lose the taste gradually for the garbage food, and you start craving fresh, organic, live food. It's really interesting, because you wouldn't have imagined it before. You wanted another Big Mac, right? But that really does change completely. But it doesn't change instantaneously, and the fasting is a slow process. So in the past, what people were taught is to go to a riverside or some really peaceful pastoral setting, and where it's calm and there, hopefully the weather's good. You've got access to sunlight, fresh air, breezes, and trees and grass and all kinds of nice things. And that's where you stay and you rest while you're fasting. And running water is really helpful, like a stream. And during the fast, what happens is that the toxic residues that have been stored safely inside your cells, trillions of cells all over your body, until the body had time to get rid of them, and it never did as long as it was busy digesting and trying to eliminate food. It didn't have time for cleansing. So when you stop eating, the reason fasting does any good, at least one of the reasons, is that suddenly the body's energy is not being used up on food. So it's very intelligent and conscious, and it goes to the next most important task, getting rid of the old poison that's hurting you. And it's very expert at this. It knows where every bit of residue is in every cell of your body, and it has the ability to do cellular surgery, basically, on every cell at once. I mean, I don't think doctors are that skilled. Even some of the doctors have incredible skill. Some of them just saved Doug's life recently, and in trauma, they're incredibly heroic. But in terms of health, these ancient principles still apply. And there's no magic drug that is going to take their place ever, in my opinion. I mean, I can't certainly prove that about the future right now, but what they think, the elite, the rulers of our world, think that they're going to get all this technical life extension and merge with computers and become, I was going to say abnormal. What I meant to say is immortal. They're making some miscalculations, let's say. The old design principles that were designed into your body still work, and you can't fool them, get away with them, merge with a computer and make it it's not going to happen. They may become something, but it's not what they think they're going to get to. So anyway, learning about these old things is really critically important, and working with somebody who's very experienced in it, not on your own unless you have no choice. And if you look around, you may find people that know more about this. There's a lot more interest in it now. There's a lot on the internet. There's a lot of stories on YouTube. And what you'll find on YouTube, which is an incredible resource, by the way, as you know, is that as opposed to the old fasting, which used to be done with water only, now most people are using vegetable juices. You get a juicer, the kind that grinds slowly, if you have a choice. I mean, the fast centrifugal spinning kind are okay, but it's less oxidation by the fast speed. If you get the slow masticating one, I found a good one from Omega, which cost about $200 and some. It was a good deal, and it has like 15-year warranty on it, which they honor, and it does a good job. And anyway, you make these vegetable juices right before you drink them, and then you drink them during the fast, and you don't give your body any work to do like it has with solid food, but it's got some nutrition to help it through the fast. And then the other thing that people like Marcus and Matt Monarch and others point out, just so our rulers don't think I'm saying any of this to you, even though I've played with it for 50 years, is that it's absolutely necessary to do body temperature water enemas to keep the gut clean while you're going through this cleansing process. If you don't, then as the poison comes out of the cells, even Paul Bragg explained this in The Miracle of Fasting, which he wrote in the 60s, a great book. And he explained that if you don't keep the gut clean with water, at least the lower intestine, that you can reach with enemas, then what happens is the poison coming out recirculates, and it can make you feel really bad, and it can actually be harmful. So, in fact, Dr. Gerson, in the 1930s in Germany, when he came across by surprise his cure of cancer that was saving about 35%. I know it's illegal to ever say that, but I'm not saying it. I'm saying Dr. Gerson says it, right? So we're allowed to at least speak the words, hopefully. He cured about 35% of terminal cancer cases by his own estimation. And what he found was absolutely essential is that the patients were often dying from the painkillers, which, by the way, totally stop elimination. And yet the pain of the advanced cancer cases is so terrible, and I know this from being right up close to it. You got people who are just being tortured by it, and you can't just not deal with the pain. And it was so interesting what he found out, that if he did the body temperature water enemas, and sometimes he used dilute coffee for the effect on the liver, that the pain would disappear so completely that the pain drugs became unnecessary. It was totally incredible. And even though, of course he was attacked because it was working and he was curing people, you're not even supposed to claim that anything even cures people anymore, because you're supposed to get permanent management of diseases now so that they can be treated forever. And he was saying, no, actually, we cured it. So he was attacked. He was poisoned twice. The first time it didn't work because he got better and recovered. The second time it did work and he died. But that was like, government seal of approval on his work, that he was onto something, because he had to be killed. Same thing with the recent murders and so-called suicides of all these holistic doctors in the U.S. lately. It's because they were exposing a tiny fraction of what we're talking about tonight. All they were doing is pointing out that the vaccines were causing autism, no question about it. They had added an enzyme called nagalase that really messed up the immune system, and apparently they were theorizing that it's in all the vaccines now, just for your benefit, of course, and that there was a way to reverse the autism, which they actually cured in about 60% of all the incurable cases of autism. So, of course, that was completely unacceptable, and they all died. And if you believe it, they all committed suicide, like the first doctor that shot himself twice in the chest and then ran over and jumped in a river to commit suicide. It's very dangerous telling the truth. But you have two choices. You either tell the truth or remain silent while members of your family, which means humanity, are suffering and dying when they shouldn't be. And members of the power structure are carrying out the orders of the rulers without realizing that if you work for these people, it's not going to be good for you. It's not a question of whether you get caught, which you may. It's a question that you have an internal mechanism that will make sure it catches you, and you can't get away from it. So it's better if you find yourself serving the detrimental forces to consider a change in course while you still have time to do that. And instead of us hating these people who are on the level that I said before, not really knowing what they're doing, our job is not to hate anybody. This is a subtle point, and I know I'm jumping around, I apologize, but it's all directly related to the question of how do you become immune, at least at this point, to EMF, chemtrails, nuclear power, etc. And everything I'm telling you is an essential element. You can't just take a pill and do it. You can't even just stop eating something and do it. You have to put these dots together. And you have to wake up enough that you don't mind doing your homework. I say that as somebody who procrastinated and was subject to laziness for long years of my life. And I was finally inspired by people who weren't and realized, wow, what are you doing? Wake up. And it all goes together because I was eating things that were not right for my body, and they were keeping me in a physical fog as well. And that's happening to most of us. And when you get out of it, it's incredible, because you look back at how you used to feel, and you can't even recognize it. It's like, you remember that commercial on TV a few years ago with one of the drugs that was supposed to cure hay fever, right? I mean, cure it if you took it every day or something. And horrible idea to do, but this is, and they had, in order to give you the real understanding of how wonderful the drug was, they showed this lady walking through the countryside, and it was kind of gray, and then she took the drug, and the sky cleared up, and there were bluebirds flying around and everything, and it says in a quick, soft voice, oh, it may kill you and, rot your brain and give you heart attacks and all these other things, but don't worry about that. Ask your doctor if it's right for you. And she's smiling while they're saying the disclaimers. Programming. And it's like that when you lighten and go toward the other end of the continuum with all the little habits in your lifestyle, because you're going to look back and say, wow, I wasn't even conscious in my life. I was just a zombie compared to how I am now. But then the challenge is, once you do that, to realize, oh, compared to how I could be in the future, I'm being a zombie now. So let's keep going and not fall into complacency at any level. I am going to shut up in a little while and talk to people with questions. But I just have a couple of more things to put into this, puzzle that I'm trying to put together for you. We talked about why the vaccine thing is false, and the antibody theory is false. And the germ theory also is completely misunderstood. I think we mentioned that, but didn't really explain it. I did finish, for the moment, telling you about fasting, and and when the old people, no, I don't mean aged, I mean in other ages, talked about fasting as a remedy and detoxification, which it still is. They usually didn't say fasting by itself. They said prayer and fasting. But they weren't talking about getting a book of whatever it is you believe and we're just reciting it over and over again. That doesn't work for what they wanted you to do. What they're talking about is becoming aware of where your thoughts and emotions are and reconnecting them to something beautiful. Which in their case, they may have been talking about ultimate spiritual realities. But it's not like some kind of intellectual idea that you're ready to argue with somebody about. It's the essence of beauty and consciousness and love. And if you can keep your attention on that while you're doing your fast and your enemas and lightening your diet and becoming aware of your thoughts and things like that, levels of energy and healing power get unleashed that nobody told you about before. So the thing about, let me just mention about the germ theory, because I hope I'm not overloading you with too much stuff. I don't know. I tend to do that. And it's just because it's exciting to me, and I want everybody to have all the tools immediately. So you have to forgive me if I'm saying too much, but I'll try to put the rest of the puzzle together quickly for you. Germ theory. It's typically attributed to a guy named Pasteur. You've heard of pasteurization. That was named after him. Because, and a lot of people say, I don't remember because I was not there. I have no memory of that time. But they say that Pasteur actually stole the theory from a French scientist, chemist, and researcher named Béchamp. And both of them originally, Pasteur, because he plagiarized the whole thing, apparently, said that they found germs in diseased tissue of human bodies and other kinds of bodies, and they said, aha, the germs cause the disease. Now, if you have any common sense and you haven't had too much school to still have common sense, you'd know, wait a minute. The fact that two things are there at the same time does not necessarily mean one caused the other one. The classic example is you're looking through a fence, right, and it's got a knot hole where some of the wood fell out, and a cat walks by, but the hole is small. And first you see the head of the cat, and then you see the body and the tail of the cat finally. And you're being one of these scientists like them saying germs cause disease, and you say, aha, head causes tail, because first there was head and then there was tail. And that's not a very deep understanding. So, but it was a great, way to boost the drug business, because now you have to kill every microorganism in the world to be healthy, because germs are evil. Must be a mistake of God or nature or something. And modern science has to come in and save us by killing everything and sterilizing not only the environment but your body. And that's a big project, because you can't totally do it or else you'd be dead. So you have to just work on it forever, and that justifies every drug. And actually, I guess every vaccine too, because the vaccines supposedly make you able to withstand the evil germs after you've had the vaccine, which is not true. So that was where the germ theory came up. And later on in their lives, Bichon and Pasteur, as far as I know, both of them from all that I've read about it, they both said, oh, well, to paraphrase Ghostbusters, sorry about the germ theory thing. That wasn't right. But what really, the germs don't matter. And actually, of course, they matter, but they weren't the cause, the proximate cause, as lawyers would say. They said the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything. And what they meant by that, again, you're not ever supposed to hear this, but what Pasteur and the other guy meant by this is that if the terrain is not healthy, in other words, the condition of your tissues, then the microorganisms are attracted to it. But the problem was in the tissues. So if your tissues are full of toxins that have built up, and the body tries to keep them where the microorganisms will not be attracted, that's where they're walled off in your cells, waiting for a chance to be eliminated. But on the way out of the body, or if there's just too many and they can't be stored away in isolation, then it's like if you have outdoor cats and you leave out cat food all night, every night, and eventually skunks come, it's not the fault of the evil skunks, even though you might get sprayed. It's the fact that you left the cat food out. This is what used to be called common sense. And so if you don't want the skunks there, if you're getting sprayed all the time and you think that's not very good for you, certainly not very pleasant, you might want to consider not leaving the cat food out. And it's the same thing about the germ theory. That if your body is really dealing with a lot of waste matter because you're not eating the right things and you are eating the wrong things, and they're building up in your body and making all this residue, then the microorganisms are not at fault. They know their job very, very well. In fact, they're so devoted to their work, which they do day and night, that they're an inspiration to people, because they're way more devoted and single-minded than we are. And they get their work done. And some of their work is to keep us immune from disease, and those are the ones that we're supposed to have in our gut and all through our body. But other ones have the job of breaking down waste matter, whatever it is. And if they weren't doing that job, we'd be drowning in waste matter and we couldn't live. So they're not evil, but you shouldn't leave their food out. And if you're eating things that have elements that are not usable by the body, these become waste, and they attract problematic microorganisms that can then generate byproducts and give you other, results that you're not going to like. Now, the other thing is sometimes, especially when the body is young and it has a lot of energy, this happens with little kids all the time, and they're being fed by the parents who don't know any better, all kinds of junk. And the body has a lot of vitality when it's very young. And it says, forget that, I'm throwing it out. It starts throwing up, running a fever, eliminating all this garbage, smelling bad and everything. That's not a mistake. It's not the kind of sickness that is a bad thing. I mean, if it gets to a certain point where the fever is dangerous or something, it may have to be dealt with. But the basic thing that the body's trying to do is to violently throw out these poisons. And that's acute sickness. And often it's called infectious disease because there's so much junk floating around in the body at that point. It's food for these destructive microorganisms, and they can get in there, and their byproducts can make other problems. But if you don't have that junk in your body, if you get it cleaned out, you don't get sick. I can tell you that from experience, long experience, and talking with others who have done the same thing. You get your body clean, and you move far enough on the continuum that you're not eating any more junk, and especially when you get toward live food and you're really stabilized in it, the body gets closer to its normal state. It doesn't have any bad smell coming out of it. You don't need deodorant. You smell fresh all the time. You cannot wash it for a month. It still smells fresh. I mean, if you fall in tar or something, obviously you got to clean that off. But in general, it stays fresh smelling and clean all the time. That's its normal state. You still might have to wash dirt off or things like that, but it's not like we're used to it. And you don't need the perfumes and all this stuff. If there's nothing wrong with using cosmetics and perfumes and that sort of thing, but you want to read the ingredients like you do on food. And the general rule, if you don't want, I'm sorry I'm rambling, but this is all answering the question, how practically can you get maximum immunity to chemtrails, EMF, nuclear power, all this stuff? These are the answers. And I'm sorry if it's not one sentence with a magic pill, but it's just not. I mean, that's just not true. And as long as we don't know where the real answers are, we keep getting confused and thinking, wow, you know, why in the world am I just hopelessly affected by chemtrail fallout? And I feel sick from it all the time, and it feels like some kind of flu or something. I'm trying to tell you the answers to that question as quickly as I can. And it's just, you know, has some different parts of it, and you just have to put them together. And it's taken me decades. I've been the slowest learner you can imagine. You know, I'm sure other people would have learned it quicker, but having made almost every stupid mistake that I could possibly manage to make along the way, paying dearly for those mistakes. I mean, I really did stupid things with food. I lost teeth because I was messing up on sugar balance and stuff that I'm now stuck with trying to figure out how to regenerate lost teeth, and which can be done, but it's not so immediately easy. Anyway, I've learned by doing it all wrong, and that's why I'm sharing it with you so you don't have to go through that. And especially since we're under so much intense attack right now, in all these different ways, you need to know all this stuff right away. So, the most important element in the whole thing here is actually in your attention and learning to get clear in your own consciousness and learn how to communicate with and listen to your own body, which will be overjoyed that you finally pay attention to it. It's not a pile of cells that just happen to line up so that they work most of the time. It's alive in a way that is amazing. I mean, reality, if we ever got back in touch with it, it's beyond what we would consider magical. And I don't mean magical in an evil sense that people are just terrified of because they think it's something from the dark side or anything. No, reality is so beyond magic. It would make you so happy all the time to be in touch with it that, you know, it would be an effort for you to remember problems. You'd remember them, but they wouldn't touch you. They just bounce off. And that's what I want you to get to. So, you know, the Beatles sang the song, "Love Is All You Need." And we're talking about musicians that had to be killed before, like Michael Jackson, because they were spreading love and harmony and things like that. They had to be demonized and killed, just like the holistic doctors. But they were telling the truth. And love is all you need, but love includes a lot of depth. It's not like some love that's just described in a romance novel or something. It's a very deep issue. And it's a proactive thing. It's something that you give. It's not just an emotion that you happen to be lucky and fall into sometimes, although there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's great. But the kind of love that these really wise teachers talk about, that's a verb. It's something that you do because you decide you're going to give it as a gift. And talking about laws of nature, there's no way that you can give it to somebody else any more than you give it to yourself. Sorry, you can't do it. It's not, and I tried because I was, again, the slowest learner you can imagine. I thought, love yourself, what does that mean? You know, I don't even like half the things about myself, and I've made all these mistakes, and I was into self-punishment, self-condemnation, which most of us are on some level, and that's suicide. You have to find that and drop it. Because as long as you believe in justice, apply it to yourself, you're going to apply it to other people, you're not even going to know what forgiving somebody means, and you're not going to have access to the healing power that comes from a totally different level. And I would like you to have full access to it for your whole life and thereafter. So, but especially while you're hanging around here in a physical body, it's quite useful. So this kind of love is that it's really hard to describe. And I told you I'm just a beginner student in all this, so I'm only talking from my low level of understanding, relatively speaking. It's like if you think you are your body, you're not going to be able to get rid of your addictions. Because it's going to be like, I need it. You know, give me this because it's the only way I can feel good. And it just goes from there. If you look at your body like a small child that's in your care, then addictions are just going to fall off you with no effort. And I know you may not believe me, but you have to really get to where that's how you see your body. And your personality even, you have to look at it the same way. And you have to be kind to it. Not harsh, not judgmental, not justice-oriented. Well, you've done all these bad things, which we've all done. Therefore, you have to be punished. If you've got that belief system about yourself, at any level, you're going to be blocked in applying almost any of the stuff I'm talking about. So if you want to have any experience of love of other people on the level that you can get to, you got to give it to yourself 1,000%. And this whole teaching that we've all gotten where you can either be selfish or selfless is not true. They're not different. Because if you want to serve yourself, you have to give everything you can to others, whether they're nice to you or not. You just have to serve every second and with every ounce of your energy that you can. And if you want to serve others at all and be of any use to them, you have to do everything good for yourself that you can do. And it doesn't mean, get drunk or do all these self-destructive things, use drugs, smoke cigarettes so that you'll relax, or those things you got to get beyond, not by force, but by relaxation and wisdom. But I mean good things for yourself that make you feel better, stronger, give yourself as much sleep as you need, start getting exercise, get more fresh air, don't eat garbage. I mean things like that. Those are gifts to yourself. And you're never going to be able to really fully help others unless you do that for yourself. So you might as well start now if you want to feel good. And what we're after here, and my attempted scream, although I can't do it as well as my friend Michael Jackson did it. But my attempted scream when we started was because it's really, really simple. We just want to feel good. Everybody wants to be as happy as they can possibly be. And if you don't, you lost touch with yourself, because really that's the natural thing that we all gravitate to. And most of what we do is to get there. That's why people take drugs, because they don't want to deal with what's making them subconsciously uncomfortable. And they want to feel good. And the fastest way to do that, temporarily, is with some kind of drug or power trip over somebody else so you can feel powerful, or, proving that you're right and they're wrong, or some stupid thing that doesn't really help you at all. And eventually, you get tired of that because you always end up frustrated. There's so many songs about that, but they're all true. that's not the way to get anywhere except wasting the time that you've got in your life, which is way too valuable, and we don't know how many more seconds that we've got here. We're not going to be non-existent. That's another story, but we are going to end our physical life, and we don't know how much valuable time we've got in it, so we should use it, and the best way to start is give this kind of love to yourself. If you know that something good for you, it's going to make you stronger and healthier. Do it like a gift to a small child in your care. And make your decisions of what to eat based on what you want to feed that child. It doesn't take a lot of willpower to not feed the child that you're babysitting poison, right? If you're a semi-normal person. It takes a lot of willpower not to eat poison if you think it's you and the body and all you want is taste. But if it's a little kid that you're taking care of, I'm telling you, a super powerful tool. It takes no willpower to be nice to that kid. So try it. I mean, it's amazing. So what else? If you want to learn and grow and progress faster in this and actually understand some of what we're talking about for real, look for nice things you can do for other people, and do not look for what you get back. Just know that every time you even send a good thought to someone, that you're getting it back many times that. And you keep doing that, and after a while, it's going to totally change your entire experience of everything. Even if our rulers succeed and kill us all, which is what they're after, you're going to end up in a very, very good place. And you're going to have so much wisdom just because you found out it's not serve other people or serve yourself. It's serve yourself, be 100% selfish, and do it by giving everything you can to everybody else. And if somebody's put into your life that is a difficult person, or they're being, mean to you in some way, of course, defend yourself. Defend yourself to whatever degree you have to. That's basically obvious, but don't fall into reactive hatred of anybody, ever. Because you immediately short-circuit your own energy, you ruin your immune system, you become more susceptible to the bad effects of chemtrails and everything else. This is a really subtle trap, because if you learn about all these environmental attacks on us, the natural response is to get mad, to get fearful, to get depressed, to get upset. And that very thing short-circuits your electrical system and ruins your immunity. If you pick that up, that's enough to make this whole class valuable. So I hope you were listening, or, the archive people listening later will pick that up too. And so it's not, some wonderful selfless thing to serve others. It's the wisdom to know this is also serving yourself, and there's no difference between us except for our mental programming, which we falsely take on as our identity. Even the people who are doing these terrible things, they're highly confused, and they think they have this identity of these bad people. They're going to find out sooner or later that they made a miscalculation, and they're going to have to come back and learn exactly the same things that we have to learn. So we need to have compassion for them, even if we have to defend ourselves at some point with lethal force. I'm not saying proactively, but this is why we have, the firearms rights in America as one of the last places in the world, other than maybe Switzerland, is that when you lose your firearms rights, you can be sure that the rulers of the country are close to wanting to wipe you out. And in the 20th century, that 262 million people were killed by their own governments in exactly this sequence, disarming them first and then murdering them. And we'd prefer not to see that happen. So you don't keep your gun rights because you want to shoot anybody. You keep them because when you lose them, it's not a good sign for what's going to happen next. And the power structure is trying to make us forget that. It doesn't mean you're not peaceful. And they go together. They can go together. And once you understand how to serve yourself and really be selfish successfully, then you start giving everything you can to the people around you. When something difficult comes up, you say thank you inside yourself, not start swearing and say, why did this have to happen to me? once you start saying thank you and say, what's the lesson? What is the lesson that I need to learn from this perfectly tailored situation? Please let me actually see what the lesson is. Your whole world is going to totally change. I'm telling you that because I'm doing the same thing. So as far as what can be healed, not just getting to where you can walk through EMF and chemtrail residue and everything and still feel fine, which you definitely can do that, but you can do much more. The body has its own conscious intelligence, and it always tends toward harmony and peaceful, successful function of all the organs. Every cell is individually conscious. They're all working diligently for this goal, and they hope that you will help them and not get in their way, which we tend to do. So you can basically heal anything, and it depends on how much damage we've done already to our own body by making mistakes. But you can basically heal anything. There's nothing out of range that you can't deal with. You can at least, even if you're about to die, so-called in quotes, because the concept of dying is extremely misleading compared to what is really going on there. But even if you're close to dying, you can die much more peacefully if a little before you die, you start cleaning your system out, stop poisoning it, stop abusing it in ways we didn't know we were doing. And your transition will be much more peaceful than if you just start cutting all your organs out and things along that line. So almost anything's healable because the power inside you, that's a creative healing power, if you can remember it and reconnect to it, it's astounding. It's really amazing. But I have to caution you about one thing, too, that I did not say before. And that is that if you make a decision to start upgrading your own life, don't make other people feel bad about it. There's a subtle thing that your mental programming can trick you into doing, especially if you're around family or friends and they're not doing what you're doing. They're going to, deep fry, the latest animal that they just brought in or something like that. Don't have any bad thought about that because it'll ruin the quality of everything you're doing. Do not try to convert anybody except by your example, because they have their own lessons that are exactly planned out, and they're not going to be able to learn any lesson 1 minute before they're ready. So watch yourself. Do not criticize anybody, even in your mind. Be aware of what's going on, but not condemning. And that little subtle thing has massive power. If you do it like that, all the people who are ready will watch you, and you'll be serving the whole world by example. And it's very powerful. But if you try going out as an evangelist for any kind of healing that you're doing or whatever, and you go after the people who don't want to listen, you're going to be creating exactly the kind of energy that short circuits all healing, and it's making a mistake. So just as long as you understand that, you won't be doing it. And as long as we're here in physical form, and we're the consciousness in the form, we're not the bodies, we're not the minds, we're the awareness or consciousness that's in them. If you've ever watched somebody die, and you watch the light go out of the eyes from the bottom upward, and you understand what's happening, the consciousness that is you is leaving that vehicle of experience and going to its next place. And again, it has nothing to do with beliefs. This is what's actually taking place biologically and on other levels. But as long as we're here and we get to use these really neat vehicles, might as well learn in detail how to get them back to what their potential really is. And our job is, in whatever terms you want to put it, we need to just bring back our normal state, which is basically heaven on earth. And yeah, our rulers may be working toward the opposite, bringing hell on earth right now, but they're doing their job, we have to do ours. And if you really do it and you get deeply into what we're talking about here, nothing can penetrate your normal state. None of these problems that we're talking about, these environmental insults, if you clean yourself up, get the toxic junk out, upgrade what you're putting in, start being grateful for anything that happens in your life, even the apparently worst thing, and ask what is the lesson and try to learn it. And love others regardless, in this way that we said, not being enamored of their personalities, but what you give them in energy. Even if you say nothing, which is one of the most powerful ways, then your resistance to outside insults will be so high, people won't understand it, but you'll get to enjoy it. So I've got just a little bit more to wrap up with. And in the meantime, we've had Susan waiting a long time in California, something about glyphosate and grains, and let's talk about that. Anything specific like that that you guys want to bring up is totally fine. So Susan, how are you doing?
Really good. This is a really good talk. I'm like amazed. You've answered a lot of my questions. Originally, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming through great. Thank you.
Okay, good. Originally I called because I heard your show, your live talk on Saturday morning once about 2 weeks ago. Really good, talking about what you talked about tonight, a lot of, addictions and loving yourself and those things. And that's definitely a problem for me. I have a lot of guilt, and I get to be the slowest learner. I promise you. I am the slowest learner because I am not there yet. But I have, guilt about everything I do, and so I keep destroying myself with something I know isn't good for me that I don't want to do. And I'm like, how do I quit? How do I stop when it does things that are positive for me, like relax me a little bit, raise my mood, maybe serotonin, whatever. So, but I've known this, what you talk about, since high school, and I haven't done it. So I'm ready to do it now. But I wondered, somebody had told me that there's glyphosate sprayed on a lot of grains, and that what they use to make beer is poisoned with glyphosate, which would maybe make it more addictive. I don't know. I wondered what your thoughts are on that, and then how do I learn to, you were talking about it before, and I need to probably hear it again, but, let go of the guilt of that and realize, it served a purpose, maybe, whatever, but now it's time to raise my little 5-year-old girl into a healthy person instead of,
Yeah. Well, I can just give you a couple of ideas, and then you have to see what feels good for you. But as far as the grains, first of all, with the beer and stuff like that, number one, if it's not organic, it is almost definitely going to have residues of, whether it has glyphosate or not, it's got all kinds of other poisons that they use to grow things that are called conventional. And we're at a point now where it's not safe to eat or drink anything conventionally grown. Even if it doesn't have glyphosate, it's going to have some kind of, weed killer, insecticide, fungicide, and it's going to have chemical fertilizers used in growing it, which means a lot of times people don't understand this. They talk about pesticides, but it's the chemical fertilizers that lead to the pesticide use, because the chemical fertilizers mess up the balance of the microorganisms in the soil, and the insects that are just like microorganisms, they have a job to do, and they come to wipe out the crops that are grown with chemical fertilizers because they're unbalanced nutritionally. So you're taking in all of that, lack of good nutrition and balance and poison if what you're eating or drinking is not organic. The other thing I'd say about that, and I'm assuming you're talking for you with the beer, not for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's fine. All of us are just drowning in all kinds of addictions, and the problem is we don't usually see them because we're so used to them. So I would just say that once you start progressing and dealing with the other question that you brought up that we'll talk about in a second, of not having the guilt and the condemnation of yourself, you're going to lose all interest in anything alcoholic completely. Because the reason that alcohol is attractive, it's not a food, obviously, but it's a brain cell killer. And so what happens is when you drink anything with any alcohol, it starts destroying brain cells, and it makes you kind of be able to zone out so that you don't have to be aware of what you're uncomfortable with. That's the attraction of alcohol. And it's the same as the attraction of any drug. Whether it's, a certain kind of candy that you eat all the time for the sugar effect, or, cigarettes or anything else, the attraction of the drug is that you get to become less aware of what's bothering you. So in order to not have that attract you, you don't have to drop things like that by force of willpower. For one thing, it's no fun, and for another thing, it doesn't work. Because if you force yourself, say, not to drink beer as an example, it works for a while and you feel more and more and more tense and distressed about it. You end up, probably drinking 10 times as much beer as you were before. So that applies to any drug, not just beer. So if you want to be able to effortlessly drop things that aren't good for you, which alcohol is not, and it reduces your immunity to everything, then you have to do it on the positive route that we talked about. And if you're stuck trying to figure out how to love yourself, one way to do it, to get past that block, is thinking, what would you wish for other people that you care about? Do you want them judged and punished? Or do you want them, people that you care about, can you forgive them and realize that they were just confused or really in a bad space when they made all their mistakes? And if they're, wishing to do better, do you want them punished, or do you want them just given everything good? And
absolutely.
Do you see what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
probably not explaining it very well, but if you want something really wonderful for them, whoever you love and care about, whether you don't want them punished, you want them to understand and do better at whatever it is they need to do, and then you want them to have everything good that they could possibly want in their life. That's if you care about somebody, that's normally what you would want for them. You're not going to be able to send them that kind of energy until you do it to yourself. So if you really care about who's around you, or anybody in the world, or the people in another country, or the people in your country or your town, and you want to unleash this tremendous healing power that every single individual has, that is so strong you could change the world, and that you're not supposed to know about, you are going to be the one to decide when you're allowed to use that. And one of the main deciding factors is going to be when you're willing to use it on yourself.
Wow. That's really
so
good.
It's totally up to you. You can wait the rest of your life, or you can start right now, or you can start at any point in between. But it's not involuntary. It's completely in your power. But if you start trying to do it by force, even eating something good, forget dropping alcohol. If you just want to eat something that's really good for you, even that is difficult if you try to do it by force, and it may have a backlash. But if you do it like this, where your body is changed over in your own mind to a small child that you really care about, and you start watching everything from a thought level on down, that you're giving that child like you're raising it, it doesn't take any more willpower. If it starts feeling like it takes willpower, you're forgetting, your point of view that you need to maintain. If you're doing it right, it's going to feel effortless.
Wow.
So
Thank you, Richard.
Maybe that helps. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm really glad you.
It helped me a lot because I was in the place where I was thinking, I'm in the place now where I can raise myself. I can raise my little girl that was hurt, you know? And I'm not doing it because I have this guilt, you know? So what you've said, this whole talk has been transformational for me. I hope for others. I'm sure for others. So I just thank you so much.
You know, people are so impressed with justice, right? They consider that as one of the great qualities. That's not correct. Justice has a lot of enjoyment of punishment in it, and if you enjoy or want punishment for anybody else, you are absolutely going to want that for yourself on some level. So you have to get to the point of forgetting about justice, sorry. And it doesn't mean letting people run over you. It doesn't mean letting a carjacker come in and murder you. You have self-defense. You have to do that. But it's talking about what you're sending out as a transmitter of energy to everybody all the time. And what you're sending out to the other people, you always send out to yourself. So if you want justice and you want bad people punished, you're never going to stop punishing yourself.
Wow. Thank you.
I hope you can use it. It gets fun. You start putting this in your life, and it gets enjoyable. You'll like it.
I probably need a step-by-step book or something.
Yeah, I wish we had one.
I like the way you made it really simple. You're babysitting the kid. How are you going to treat them? And how should I treat myself as a little 5-year-old? And
That's right.
It makes perfect sense.
Everything
so I
is
just
okay.
want to thank you. Yeah, so much.
You're welcome. I'm grateful to you for bringing it up. And we just if difficult people come in your life or difficult circumstances, once you decode it and realize that they only come up to teach you an exact lesson that you need, then when it happens, instead of the usual stress reaction, you say, thank you, like to your parent who's taking care of you, and you say, I just want to know, please show me exactly what I'm supposed to learn from this and help me learn it and do it. And then, wow, your whole life becomes something that on another level you enjoy. So, anyway, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for doing this. This is really good. I'm looking forward to more like this. Thank you.
Yeah. Come
Thanks
to the
for
shows.
Answering my question.
Okay. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you in a while.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so thank you to Susan. That was a great issue that she brought up to help us understand justice versus love, and they're not the same thing. I mean, I used to watch Superman, right, and Batman was one of my heroes as a kid, and that was all about justice. They're not telling you the whole story, and the internal punishment of yourself leads to not good things. So it doesn't matter what you did wrong. Doesn't matter how bad the crime was. This is the origin of karma, is to punish yourself, and it goes long, long times. But you can drop it when you're ready to drop it, and when you are no longer attached to wanting punishment and pain for anybody else. You can want to stop bad things in the world, but that's different than wishing suffering for people who are doing them. That is self-destructive. And if you learn about that, you don't have bad intent or bad wishing for anyone. You talk about, some chemtrail pilot or some person in the government is giving the order for people to be destroyed somewhere in the world. You don't hate them. You just wish them everything good to happen to them so that they get the wisdom and they have no longer any desire to hurt anybody. That has so much more power than a desire for justice. The justice thing leads to an endless feud, the old Hatfield and McCoy thing that just never ends. And you can stay in it as long as you want. But at some point, eventually, you realize that's no fun. I want to feel good. And I also want healing. for myself and other people too. And you find out they go together. And the more good you wish for others, the more of it comes amazingly by surprise to you. So, worth playing with, I would say. So anyway, I don't know if other people are going to be brave enough to ask questions or not, because we're going to wrap it up here pretty quick. But I want to leave you with websites, because we'll have all the archives, for example, of this one-time class, and all the shows we're doing Saturday morning and Sunday night are accessible at lostartsradio.com. And you can go in there, and there's articles in there that cover a lot of interesting things that you can do and read about. So I'd recommend that. And then lostartsresearchinstitute.org is our nonprofit. It's even approved by IRS, for tax-deductible contributions if anybody wants to support us or keep us on the air, because this is becoming like a really full-time thing that has no pay, and we're not doing anything fancy at this point to raise money for it. I hope the gold thing will help, and it might, but we really need money. So if you want to donate to any of this stuff, lostartsresearchinstitute.org, there's a donate button there, and it's tax-deductible if you want it. And then also I thought, well, I would offer some of my time if anybody wants it. If you're working on some really difficult health or life situation and you want to do a little work with me one-on-one and intensify and tailor this kind of stuff to your own situation, if I have time, I'll work with you, and that costs money, and that all gets donated to the Research Institute. So if you have the resources for that and you're interested, send me an email at richard@lostartsradio.com, and I'll answer you as soon as I can and try to get time for that. That'll help the work. But there's no big package. There's no thing that is usually $100,000, but it's $47.75 only tonight. We're just not doing that. If somebody with a lot of resources comes up with no strings attached that wants to help us expand the educational work, I really would like to do that personally. That's my preference. A very specific physical facility. I'm just sharing this with you. I've had this in my mind for a long time. I've got details of a facility that I want to construct, probably in Arizona. I found some good places that it could be, and all the energy and food on it would be produced on site, and it would be a place of healing, but it would be educational with the healing as a side effect. And I want to demonstrate what we taught thousands of years ago, adapted to modern use, and I'd really like to do that. That's where I'd like to be. So if somebody comes up with tons of resources that wants to pay for it, great. Otherwise, we're not going to do anything for money that will compromise the work we're doing. The Carrot Bars Gold thing, maybe that'll help us. I hope it will. I've met some people that are making tons of money with it, but they promote it 24 hours a day, every day. And we've got other work to do. So, if enough people see it, maybe that'll be helpful. So that's all about the money stuff that I wanted to say. And before we make closing points, got to let Bridget in to see what she's got in mind. Calling from California. Hi, Bridget. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, Richard. I just want to thank you for your show and what you've brought forth for the public, because basically about 2 years ago, I hurt my ankle, got stuck in bed, and long story short, you start learning things, and you're like, wow. If they lied about that, what else are they lying about? We call it falling down the rabbit hole. But basically, by listening to your show, you have hit 2 years of the growth of what we've learned down through and very kindly and delicately brought forth what needs to be heard in such a compassionate way. And when we learn some of these things, it does get depressing. And you talked about thoughts being things, and it does. Yeah. You fall into a deep, depression, then you get mad. And then you fall back into depression again, and then you get mad, and then you went, you know what? It's okay. It's okay. And it will be. But I think by doing this show and bringing all these things in one area is going to allow so many people to shorten the learning curve in a more delicate way. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart that you're bringing that forth, because I do worry. I lose sleep every now and then about, like, our children, the way they're being taught, and what fallacies that human beings, and there's a lot of people that don't want to know. And what you said about being delicate with your family and not judgmental or preachy. I'm a mom, so I'm preachy. I own it. But I wanted to touch about a couple things just in closing, because you hit so many good things. But I was making notes. Thoughts are things. And energy, when you were talking about love, you talked about it in different areas of the show. But it needs to be, like, restated, because the root of everything is love and gratitude. Yeah. And thoughts are things. The energy that we bring forth is so important. And I know some of that is so esoteric, and people go, no, that's woo-woo. No, it's not. It's gravity. You don't need to understand gravity for it to work. It's the same thing, whether you believe in God or the source or the universal, your soul. You don't have to believe in it. It's like you say, I think a lot of them don't realize what they're thinking and doing. And we call them the puppet masters that are, in control of these different things. And one of the hardest things I think it was for us, and maybe you could speak on this, is when you realize that you can't wrap your head around why. And when you realize that there is good and evil, and there is dark and light, and there is a balance, and it's hard, because you think, why would somebody want to force sterility on their children? Why the BPAs in our plastics? It's toxic, and we're surrounded by plastics. Why would they allow that? They're not our friends. The FDA is not our friends. The people that are supposed to be protecting us and keeping us safe, in our minds, we think, the higher-ups are there to help us. It's not. So I just wanted to bring back around about the thoughts or things. And one of the things I didn't hear you say is they feed off of our fear. And just with the love and sending out the good emotions and the thoughts, and in the morning, gratitude. One of the words I didn't hear you say, which I'm sure you would have, is gratitude. Is every morning, before I just barely even your brain starts waking up, is whether you call it praying or meditating or just connecting and sending out love, however you want to say it, there is no right or wrong way of doing it, is gratitude. Because we've gone through horrible things, fires and drunk drivers and losing property and all sorts of crazy things in the last 2 years. And I'm still sane. A little bit of caffeine, can't you tell?
That's fun. That's all right.
But honestly, the gratitude and the love, and realizing that they feed off of your fear, and not to give in to that no matter what. And everything will be okay, because it's true. Your body is just an envelope. And I won't get into why I know this, but things have been happening. And the diet and the nutrition and cleansing your body, your energy, your chakras, you don't have to believe in it. It just works. It's the way our bodies are made to work. And when we start giving it what it needs, I think the fluoride and the attack on our pineal gland and the solidification of it and all the toxins are for a reason. I think I honestly, and if you could address this, I'd really appreciate it, because I'd like to know more, because I don't know enough of it about our pineal gland. But I think, and correct me or give me more information, I'd really love it, is the fluoride solidifies our pineal gland. I think our pineal gland is how we connect externally, psychically, and to the source, to God, to the all-knowing, whatever you want to call it. I honestly believe they know that. I think they know historically, through the Sumerians, through the Egyptians, all throughout history, they know things that have been hidden from us. And it's those things I want to know. But I think they honestly, they know. And that's how they control humanity, and how they shift things, and the diversions, the TV sets, and all the things. Unplug the TV, unplug the video games, cleanse your body, and connect back to nature. And I love the fact that you shared about being barefoot, because it's true. I was kind of a barefoot kid all my life, and I feel the difference. and runs around barefoot a lot.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I just want to thank you again. And if you could talk about the chakras and pineal gland, if you know anything about those things, to share with us. And about our skin being the largest organism. You mentioned about the fluoride in the showers, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But even just like our lotions. And I catch myself going, why am I using this? This is not good. And they're actually changing the chemicals in our products, because I put on something, I won't say the name brand, but I've used it for years and years, a lotion. And I put it on, and all of a sudden my skin was burning, and I couldn't understand why. And I picked up an old bottle that was empty, compared it to a new one. They actually changed the formulations. And this is a well-known product. And I think they're doing it on purpose. And that wasn't just to cut corners or anything else. Right.
Well, stay on if you will while I answer a couple of those things in case I leave any of it, out or, it's not
I'd love
clear.
It. Thank you.
When you're talking about... Thank you for
being so brave and to bring forth what you have brought forth, honestly. Even about the doctors in Florida, because it's so true.
I mean, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to be allowed to be doing this, because I didn't think, when we have so few people that even know about our show right now, I have thought a lot, why are we doing this? We're reaching almost nobody. But if it's beneficial for a few people, that's enough reason to do it. And the other thing is that now that we are reaching a few more, I mean, Doug would not have had the experience with being blocked on our trying to advertise this class on Facebook if we weren't, in the sites right now.
And there's so many people that do different areas. They're attacked all the time. I mean, Alex Jones is one. He's very vocal about it. but,
I know.
Honestly, the FBI, they harass him, and he's got backbone. I when I first came across him, I'm like, wow, he's a very angry man. He's loud, but then he starts making sense, and you listen to him, and it's because he's passionate and he's fearful for where the world's going. And he wants you to listen. And now he totally makes sense, and he's actually taken it down a notch, I think, personally, in the last 2 years.
Well, he's gradually learning, what we're talking about very slowly. I have incredible admiration for what Alex does every day. And the crew that he's put together is amazing. And he is gradually learning, and he does know intellectually that if you lose yourself in complete anger, you're going to short circuit and lose your effectiveness.
Oh, he's even said the same thing himself.
He said it on the air. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So what you were saying about feeding off fear, and you can tell me if I forget any of what you asked about, but what I do remember, it reminds me of the kids' movie Monsters Incorporated. Did you ever see that?
Yes, I have. It's very cute, but what they're doing is not.
Yeah, well, but it is like that. It's a cartoon where these monsters, scare kids, and then they bring back the fear energy to their central office, and it's really pretty true. And it took me forever to learn this. I was a really slow learner, but I found out that the truth is that fear is voluntary. You are not obligated to have a given reaction to something on the outside. In other words, we've been trained that if such and such bad thing happens, if you don't either have fear, anger, or whatever, then you're an irresponsible person who doesn't care.
Isn't that the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard?
Well, I've heard a lot of ridiculous things, but it's
we're trained that way.
Yeah. And so as long as this is why I wanted people to become aware of your programming. Because one of the programs is, if this happens, you have to feel like this. And that's not true. So, the power structure is individuals that have an addiction, like we get to a drug or to a power trip or whatever, and their addiction is causing pain and death.
Oh, yeah.
And
they get serious issues with these people. And I say people collectively, because I'm not going to name any names, but they're there is a whole side of the world. When you take off the rose-colored glasses or you fall down the rabbit hole, we have all these cliche names for it. It wasn't anything that we did on purpose. It just, it organically happened. And I think, honestly, I honestly believe that the universe is the energy in the universe, and either you're connected to God, connected to Earth, whatever it is, an awareness. I don't want to offend anybody because it's just, it is. The best way I can describe it is gravity. You don't have to believe in it. It works. It's the same thing.
Right.
I think there's an awakening.
It's not about a belief system. And these people in the power structure, you know, when all of us got born into this very rough place, although it's very beautiful at the same time, some of us put on different costumes.
For a reason.
And
I heard,
when we
I picked up on that from things that you've said.
Yeah, when we put on these costumes, they're magic costumes, and you feel like that's you. And it's not like playing a role in a play, because those people usually remember that it's a play and they're an actor. But when you get born into one of these identities on this level of existence, you totally get woven into it and feel that that's you. And on this level, there is what's called polarity or duality. So you see not just light and dark and hot and cold, which makes the universe possible, but there's also light and dark on a spiritual level. And so no matter how your brain wants to interpret a belief about it, when you get into one of those two sides and you get born as that character, you get totally into it, and it's rare to switch, especially from dark to light, but it can be done. So the people that are identifying on the darker side now, that's all they know, and they're taking their exhilaration, because we all want to feel good, and they're taking their rush of energy from hurting other people, and at the same time, because they're in the group that's hurting other people in an organized fashion, they feel like their group is going to be the most powerful left, and that they're going to rule over the planet. And that's an exhilaration that they have from power, and they live for it. And that's their drug. And it has some unfortunate side effects for everybody.
Well, I think you really hit on it when you mentioned earlier in your talk that it's universal. I mean, they think X, but it doesn't work that way, and it really truly doesn't.
No, it just takes a long time for them to figure out the mistake. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say it comes back to you, and you do carry that from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. Your soul is an energy. It's just inside the envelope. Yeah,
I mean, again, I wouldn't want to tell anybody that any belief system they want is wrong, but my personal memory is that what you said is true.
Right.
And that's not
more and more as I go, the more it's revealed.
Yeah, it is true, and it's not something you have to convince anybody else of. But like all of what we've been saying, because it would sound crazy
if you tried to explain it to somebody.
Yeah, and
people would like, whoa.
An easy
I think
mistake
we pick our own parents, actually, too.
Yeah, and
I think it gives you an opportunity. I think when you're in soul, in spirit, whatever you want to call it, energy, a spark, before you're inside, I think you actually choose. I think you choose your opportunity. I think you choose your parents. So everyone love your parents, because I think you chose them.
Yeah, that's my experience. But the thing is that you take that a little farther, and you start seeing everything that happens to you, including what you would consider terrible, as tailored for your experience to learn a lesson, and not chaotic, not a random universe where nothing is planned or has a purpose. And you go to the other side and say, I really want to know what the lesson is, and I want help learning it successfully. And if you do that and you really ask for that internally, it changes your entire experience of everything.
I believe that, but I'm so stubborn. I have such a stubborn streak. I get, because we've had a lot of bad things, negative, and I know it's for the good. I'm just waiting until the story finishes so I can look back and go, oh, that's why that happened in this and that. I believe that it's all interwoven. but just trying to get through the hurdles sometimes is mind-blowing.
It is. And what you said about fluoride in the pineal gland is interesting, and I mean, that could be a whole other session that we do for a few hours. I haven't gotten into it because, again, I don't want people to feel that I'm offending their, beliefs about anything. But what my experience is that everything's connected to everything else. This term holistic, it's not usually understood in its full scope. And what it means
is very unfortunate.
Well, it's just not time for it yet, but it will be. And the thing is that everything physically in our body is a reflection of something non-physical. Every part and every cell. And so when you talk about the pineal gland, each gland is a major center of all kinds of functions that mostly aren't even imagined by current so-called science. Even Alex Jones has talked about, who's not really ready to go beyond the conventional understanding of things in a lot of areas. He's talked on air about the pineal being the connection to another level of existence. And it doesn't mean that you have to change your religion. It's just like you said, it's an understanding of something as simple as biology. And the pineal gland, in fact, does, when it opens in a certain way, it allows vision to expand into non-physical areas. And that is known by the top levels of the power structure. So everything they have engineered into the current environment that they give us is to shut it down. And, they also know that they have a weak spot. You remember in Star Wars, and I guess it was in the first one, right, where they had the Death Star, and they were trying to finish building it. And that was Darth Vader's big project, and the evil emperor and everything. And toward the end, the good guys and Luke and everybody figured out it had one weakness. And it had, do you remember this? I don't know if it's too long ago for people to have seen.
Well, yeah, I saw Star Wars, and my kids love it, but it's been a while, so I'm listening. It's interesting.
So they had one weakness, and that finally ended up blowing up the Death Star. But in order to get it to blow up the Death Star, Luke had to end up shooting 2 missiles into this little tiny hole on the Death Star.
Right.
And the rulers of it weren't really worried because almost nobody could hit that little target, right? So the analogy to that is that if we find out who we actually are and reconnect to it, which would automatically reconnect us consciously to where we came from, that's the end of the game, because at that point there's so much healing power released in even one person who does that there's no way that the negative side could even keep going. And I see that as the only feasible way to end the drama on a good note, not by force. And that is the reason that I'm doing this stuff, because just to get physical
by
health...
the force is what they want. That's the big thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm with you with the guns and the Constitution and our God-given rights, or our being born here, our rights.
Right.
And it's true. They stir the pot. I mean, to the extent
they want as much
we don't even read the newspaper anymore. The only thing I look at, all the news media is owned. It's brainwashing. So you just look to see where they're directing your thought and where they're trying to herd people's opinion. That's the only reason we look at anything. It's just to see what lies are they telling us today and where are they trying to divert your attention. And we watch the gas prices. When the gas prices drop, there's something else going on, because they want you traveling, they want you visiting, they want you diverted. So watch the gas prices. It's interesting, because every time the gas prices drop, everybody's like, yay, we can go ride our quads, we can go visit grandma, let's go to the beach, let's take the kids somewhere. They want to divert you while they're doing something else somewhere else. And it's very interesting to watch the gas prices.
It is. Well, there's that. There's also the fact that they're using the artificially low gas prices as an attack on Russia right now.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's a lot of different levels to everything they do. But I think you're right about the importance of the pineal gland, and that it's not a coincidence that fluoride has a calcifying effect on it. But it does heal.
They work so hard to keep us down. That's what the clue to me was, is there's got, besides how awesome our body is, just by nature
right.
of being us, we are such an incredible organism. And if you look at the complex organisms of the earth, like the ants and the bees and the cells of a plant and photosynthesis, and when you really get down into it, all the BS that they've lied to us about science and about history of the planet, a lot of it is such BS. When you start realizing and looking, and things will just come about a blip, and you'll go, whoa, wait a minute, that doesn't fit into their paradigm and their fake story.
Yeah.
And it'll get discounted.
It's all beyond magical when you get to the reality of it. And the other thing that you mentioned about skin and lotions, and I would put sunscreen in that area too.
Sunscreen's horrible.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just horrible because it's toxic. Some of it actually becomes carcinogenic only when the sun hits it. It's that carefully designed. But that's not the only reason. The other reason is because a primary required nutrient is sunlight.
Absolutely, and vitamin D.
Well, it's even beyond just vitamin D. That's kind of a crude part of it that science recognized, but it's basically a carrier of life energy. And it gets picked up by the plants, in the photosynthesis process. And the skin of humans has some functions that are similar to plant leaves. And it's actually required on the skin. And an interesting thing about it is that as your body gets cleaner and as it gets the nutrients that it needs, it reacts completely different to sun exposure. So that you stop burning, it gets more comfortable, bright light gets comfortable. You eventually, and I'm not saying to do this right now or anything, but when your body's
You're
very
not
clean,
advising, you're just sharing.
Not at all. Yeah, if your body gets very clean and nourished the way it's supposed to with all the other things, you can look right at the sun at noon and it doesn't seem bright. And I can tell you that from experience. It's really different. So the lotions on your skin and makeup for women and men and everything.
Oh, yes. Hair dye.
Hair dye is one of the most dangerous that almost everybody's using now. And it doesn't come out very well in the sewer treatment plants. So it goes into the water tables, and it goes through the skin and the scalp and is a carcinogen. It has multiple poisons in it. It also is designed with these multi-level programs to cause your hair to get gray faster. And I only tell you this because I discovered it firsthand. And that's just a business aspect of it, that if the hair color makes your hair grayer, then you're going to buy more of it theoretically, and that's built into it as well.
That is so funny because I have dyed my hair in the past, and I am turning gray. I have an example of what you're saying.
Well, I can tell you that it's possible to reverse gray hair. And
there's a nutrient. Do you know which one?
It's not one. It's this whole process that I'm talking to you about. People have talked about copper and other nutrients that they said is the key, but they're missing the main point. And what happens is that when you detoxify your body and you get the nutrients and the live food back into it, and you stop putting the garbage into it, and you rearrange your thoughts and emotional patterns, and then there's one more physical thing that's needed, and that is that the hair color depends on an oil base for the pigment to exist in the hair. So when you're washing all the oil out of your hair all the time, it gradually gets drier and drier and eventually gives up, and it gets thinner, and it loses the color component. So in order to get, this is just my experience and some interesting experiments I've been involved in. It's very slow to fix it, but one of the things that helps it gets fixed, if the other elements are also there, is to put oil back into the hair. And the only one I've found that works really well and doesn't make a mess and is not too thick and everything is raw organic extra virgin coconut oil.
Oh, so, that's good for rinsing your gums too.
Yeah,
just don't put it down the drain.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a mess. But the thing that I found is that in the morning, once a day usually, I'll take a little bit of it and just put it into hair and skin and everything, and it actually helps the rest of your body, your skin as well. It gets absorbed like a food for your skin. It's really good.
I'll try that because I actually have some at home.
It helps get back hair color if the other elements needed are there.
That's amazing.
I mean, my own experience was my hair was almost totally gray from using hair coloring and constant chemical shampoo and all that stuff, as well as the nutritional stuff. And I, at this point, it's probably 95% brown again, and I'll be 70 in a few years. So,
are you really that old? You lie.
No, it's really true. So,
wow.
But you can reverse your age experience by doing what we're talking about tonight.
Absolutely. You mentioned Marcus Rosecrans, an amazing person. I mean, I really I have to say, just listening to him, he's the real deal. And I know there's some crazy people like, he's kind of crazy and he's so Hollywood. He's not pretending. He's being who he is.
No, Marcus is great.
He is just the most deeply rooted, spiritual, kind person that wants to help humanity. And you briefly mentioned him, and he talks of cleansing and eating from earth, and really, it's amazing because
he's got a number of good books, including Heal Yourself 101, which I would recommend to anybody, and it goes over the basic protocol of using fasting and juices and things to clean your body out. And the only thing that we do a little differently is I have found a way to use raw milk. And Marcus said that his followers would go ballistic if they heard him, talking positively about it, but he understands it. Right. And the Heal Yourself 101 protocol is very good, and I'd highly recommend anybody to get that book and read it. There's a lot in it.
You know what I equate all this, the whole thing in a nutshell? Is when we share with our children because we love them and we care about them and we do fun things for them, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, or whatever different stories families would share with their children, the history and that type of thing. And there comes a time where they look at you and they go, because maybe they hear it at school that there's no Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy isn't real, and they come home and then they go, well, what about the Easter Bunny? And you know what I mean? This whole dynamic, this whole paradigm of what we're discussing is, the rose-colored glasses coming off and the things that our family didn't know to teach us about our body and about life and about where we are and how we are. No, I'm sure there are some parents that are very in tune and might have raised their children in a certain way. But in general, it's almost equates to an adult version of there is no Santa Claus. It's when you realize that the people that you trust, and I'm not saying our officers or our firemen or our hardworking individuals that are just family people. There's good people, there's bad people. But the dynamics of the higher up, whether you call them the Illuminati, Trilateral Commission, all of the things, the puppet masters, it's like Santa Claus. You thought it was safe because the FDA stamped it. You think that certain things are okay. It's not. And when you realize there is no Santa Claus in the world of the politics and the dynamics of our environment, then comes the thing of bucking up and taking responsibility for your own nutrition and to learn, because we've been taught improperly. We've been taught improperly how to care for our bodies and our like you say, every cell. We're not taught that in college. We're not in medical school. They don't teach nutrition. Very little. It's the pharmaceutical companies and the what drugs prescribed for this or that. Take the best of both worlds by all means, but we were never taught. We've been blocked from this knowledge, and that's why anything you can do, Richard, to keep your show online and to keep people, even in the end, I know it's not to plug yourself, but honestly, if they find any one of these things shocking that they didn't know or something they've learned, share, because the next person that they tell, that person's life is going to be alteredly changed for the better, and then they'll tell their children or tell their coworkers. This stuff needs to be known, and some of it will happen organically like it did for us, but in a nutshell, the last 2 years of things I've learned, you hit on every single thing, and you didn't leave a whole lot out.
Well, I just hope that I wasn't saying so much that I would put people to sleep or make them bored.
Absolutely not. I know a lot of these things, and it was done with such sincerity and such heart. It's heartwarming that there's someone like you out there to share, and it's making the effort, because everybody has to do their little tiny part, and all those jigsaw puzzle pieces of everybody doing their tiny part.
You know, there's a couple of really encouraging things, too, connected to what you're saying, one of which is that if people really get to levels that we've been talking about here, beyond just getting physically healthy, and they start reconnecting to the lost part of them inside, which is where the whole Lost Arts Radio name came from, it doesn't take many. You don't need thousands. You don't even need hundreds. If a handful really get underneath what we've been trying to talk about tonight and do it, they can change the face of the planet and more.
Isn't that what we need? Because when you tackle the whole thing, it gets depressing and mind-blowing. I mean, when I started finding this, I'm like, I'm going to Washington. I don't know. I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to start knocking on doors. This is ridiculous. What are they doing? They've got to not do this. They can't do this to our planet. And I freaked out. I was like, no, see, then you start knocking on doors. You start stepping on toes. You turn up dead. Not a good idea. That's not going to be productive.
No,
so I had to take it down a notch.
It's like a hall of mirrors in an amusement park. You know, what looks like it's in front of you may be actually behind you. And the PowerPoint that you have where you want to go save the world and make things better, and you try to do it externally, then you bring up an equal and opposite or overwhelming resistance to it. And all you end up with is tremendous anger, frustration, people each wanting to kill each other to prove that they're right, while the rulers just laugh at the whole thing. And the PowerPoint that the mirrors obscured is internal. And it's not a philosophy or an esoteric belief system. It's just as normal as how the bones are connected. And if you find that PowerPoint internally, it's like Archimedes with a lever, saying that if he had a place to stand and a long enough stick, he could move the planet. And what that refers to is the internal place inside every single person. So when Einstein said that there was enough power in one particle of matter to recreate the whole physical universe, which I think he was correct, and understated actually, that's nothing compared to the power in one person. And it's not because they can go out and circulate 1,000 petitions. It's because there's something inside them beyond the physical level that has so much potential that's never come out, that really, if we start understanding that, just start working on that 24 hours a day. And the thing is, you can do it while you're doing everything else. You don't have to quit your job or not take care of your kids or anything else. It's that it all falls together to help you. And if that's what you decide to do, instantly you'll notice that the circumstances come up to teach you the next step in the program learning course. And it's all being given to you as a perfect gift. You start feeling a lot better immediately.
Well, I agree. I've got a long way to go, I'm sure, and my journey's not over.
No.
But I just know the last 2 years there's been a lot of hurdles, and it's been interesting because the dynamics of quote unquote air quotes normal life, nothing works that way anymore. And we had a house fire. We lost our home. 2 months later, we got hit by a drunk driver in the middle of the day. It's just just crazy things, the dynamics of finances and all sorts of things. It's just, it's amazing. It's like ripping it apart and refashioning it. And I know just because my own personal life, it's like an external cleansing as well as an internal cleansing. And one of the blessed things that happened, mine happened naturally. And I'm just hoping that that's the same thing for others. It's not something you have to do because you'll cross paths with that person, or somebody will hear your radio show because it's exactly what they need to hear. And they're going to hear different things that they need. And it's universal. You'll cross those people that you knew before, or somebody will be brought into your life. And whether it's just a passing or a more long collaboration, it's there. It's the universe supporting and loving and doing for us. And everybody has their own job. So what I would like to do is not probably what you would like to do, and what someone else would like to do. The dynamics are different. But that's the beauty of it, is we're all interconnected. And when you figure out that you're all interconnected, how you treat other people, when somebody cuts you off on the freeway or you don't hold the door coming into a business, those things matter. Those tiny, tiny things matter. And
those are the powerful ones. That's right. And it's just like you can dispense with willpower once you start treating your own body as a little kid that you care about. Also, and that changes everything. When you see somebody being obnoxious, like the driver that cuts you off, and you think, what if that is a little kid that I'm also, trying to help as well, or what if it's you in another form? What would you wish for yourself if that was you doing that?
You send out blessings. That's what I do, love and blessings. You don't know. I mean, a lot of the things that happen, if you get irritated with it or in general, you don't know what that person's going through. Maybe they just lost their job. Maybe they lost their mate.
You've heard the quote, "Bless those that curse you," right?
No, I haven't heard that one, but that's a good one.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you're explaining. That it's not what you say, it's what goes through your mind. And the emotion has to be there to back it up. So if that's what you wish for the person that cuts you off on the street, that's what you're going to get multiplied. And your own growth is going to speed up. And right now everything is speeding up around us. The whole physical universe that we're dealing with seems to be moving faster and faster. And our lessons are coming more quickly, so we can either respond by being upset about them, or we can respond by saying, thank you, please show me what I'm supposed to be learning. And
show me more.
The difference in what happens to your body is extreme.
Have you noticed in people that you've spoken to on your different shows that there is a greater awareness happening?
Yeah, this is why the power structure is speeding things up, because they know that there's a serious danger that the critical little number of humans might reach self-awareness to the point that that they would remember how to heal everything right away. And once that happens, there's no more war going on at all.
I'd like that. That would be one of the most amazing things. I was teaching grandbaby about different things and straw man and different politics and different things, because I thought, you know what, you need to know these things. To me, I want you to know, and you got to couch it, some of it in what you share. It's so important. The fluoride in the toothpaste, and she's totally organic now. Her mother feeds her organic, which is just a blessing for her. And she's almost 11. And so she's never been vaccinated, which is a blessing. But she didn't know about the straw man, all caps name. She's been going with me to the county and different things that I needed to do. And so she says, what's going on? And I had to fill out the application 7 different times at the campus. And I'm publishing and doing some things. And I had to explain to her. And so she got it. And when we went to actually the newspaper where you go to publish your fictitious names and things, she explained about some presidential people, I won't say the names, and who their family was and where they came from. And she explained the straw man to the ladies. And the ladies just like, wow, I've heard some of those things, and that's really interesting. I'm going to take myself, and I want a black law addiction. And so it was interesting that here, the grandbabies are teaching adults. But that's the part, is if we all just share, and that's why your show is so important.
Well, let me tell you something to keep you safe if you ever teach anybody anything. Because what can happen is you can start thinking of yourself as a teacher instead of a student, and that's dangerous. So what you need to do to keep it balanced, if you're in a situation where you're sharing this stuff, which obviously is important, at the same time, make sure that you're listening internally for what is it that I'm missing that I need to do better and learn. And if you're always doing that, you're never going to get unconsciously judgmental of anybody.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice.
It's on point.
You just say, if it was me, or this is what this is what's worked for me. I think it helps, maybe.
Yeah, and just realize that whatever that interaction is, it's there to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
It appears to be that you're helping them, but internally that really that experience, like a little movie, is there to teach you.
Mm-hmm. Tail end of the tiger some of the times. This last 2 years, like I said, I know it's ripping things apart and getting rid of possessions. And I mean, we've had, between the drunk driver, I wasn't where I was before at different locations. So we've had robberies, we've had all sorts of things. And it's redistributing the wealth. I just kind of sit back and watch. Nothing surprises me anymore. And
sometimes it takes that.
Oh, yeah. And so I'm good with it. I personally want to move out of state and have the organic farm. And it's funny that you were talking about the cows and the chickens, because it's true. If our chickens eat the GMO corn, the chicken is poisoned. And the eggs are similar. And it's mind-blowing that it's okay to genetically modify things, and it's not okay. And that was my big thing, is that, hey, Monsanto going after the GMO producers. I have issues in the colony collapse with the bees. Just breaks my heart. And so I'm one of those girls barefoot and on the farm. So I honestly don't belong where I am. I just don't know how to get out of where I am financially.
I know. Yeah, one of the things that I would like us to figure out is an alternative way to keep everybody okay financially while they destroy the economy. And I haven't quite got that figured out yet, but we're trying things like the gold thing that I told you about, because it would be good for people to have gold. And there may be other things too, but they have to be very, very carefully employed and dropped the minute that they are compromising the kind of energy we want.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no amount of money is worth it if you lose the purity of what you're doing.
Absolutely. That's one of the difficult things, the self-sustainability. When you look at Japan's garden, like there's an aerial, it was just beautiful. Tiny little parcels, but everybody grows food. We don't. Waste with lawns, or now, the rock gardens and that type of thing. They're actually trying to outlaw people growing gardens. My here freaked out because I said something and I go, oh, those aren't just bricks and cardboard. That's not trash. Those cardboard is actually going on the soil, and then the bricks are going around it, and it's going to be a vegetable garden. She goes, a vegetable garden in the front yard? And I go, it's okay. It's going to look like landscaping. You won't know the difference. It's not going to be like corn stalks in rows. And it makes it fun. And so I went ahead and did it anyway. My county does not, my city does not like me. But I've been around too long that their statutes and their codes don't apply to me. I don't consent. And there's a side that, not to create waves, of course, but it's a problem. And more and more as the government and the banks and the financing does what it does, it is going to crash. I mean, they've got it rigged up. I mean, I watched the real estate market in 2008, the bubble and all that. This whole thing wasn't by mistake. It was all planned.
I think some of the best creativity in society that's left among people that have some clarity at this point should be going into figuring out how to ease the impact of their planned financial collapse so that we can stay okay. And I'm seriously looking at ways to do that.
Yes, that's the hardest thing, is because if you're not self-sustainable between the solar power, the water, as a whole, not all of us, of course. I raise my hand. I'm game. I'll just work harder and figure it out. I like the challenge. But the thing is that people will go run for the handout. People will go run to FEMA. It's not a good thing. And so when you come up and you share, you have to be careful. Now, it's amazing because 2 years ago, we were the oddity, and you just don't say anything because you can't, but you feel like you want to save everybody because doesn't everybody know? Nobody knows. 2 years now,
if you sincerely,
and people are talking about it behind you.
Yeah, and if you want to really be maximum help to save people, you have to do most of your work internally. And I have to tell you at this point too, remember the Cinderella story about the fancy coach that, you know, it was so exciting she got to ride in and everything, and then it turned back into a pumpkin, right, at midnight. And this one's going to turn into a pumpkin in 3 minutes, so we're going to have to wrap it up. But I hope that you come and listen to the Saturday show and Sunday show sometime, because we can talk some more on that.
Thank you for blessing us with your wisdom and the things that you've learned and shared with everyone. I really appreciate it. And I know you're listeners there.
Yeah, I hope so, and I really appreciate your being part of it, too. So come back and visit on Saturday sometime.
It's been a pleasure, sir. Have a blessed evening.
All right. You too, Bridget. Talk to you later. All right. So that was great input from Bridget in California, I thought. And I really appreciate anyone who's been part of this show and listening or talking or both. And again, the ulterior motive, I just want everybody to be okay. We've gotten born into a very dangerous and hostile and unstable environment. But the realities that are not so visible, permanent, and they're not some kind of philosophy, they're real. We just have to get back in touch with them. And it would be good to do that before things on this level shut down. And of course, the side that thinks they're really into working on the dark side and it's going to be so great, they're trying to shut things down before we get in touch with what we need to contact. But there's a much stronger, permanent, positive, light-oriented healing force on our side. All we have to do is remember it and then put our attention back there. So anyway, thank you. I don't know where this is going to go. This was a one-time planned class. Maybe we'll do it again for another chapter at some point. But remember, we have Saturday and Sunday shows. We have a website that you can stay in touch with. You can get the free newsletter, which is at lostartsradio.com, and stay in touch with what's going on. And anyway, really appreciate each one of you and hope that you'll stay in touch with us. Write to me at richard@lostartsradio.com if you want to. Give us some feedback. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time.
I am hearing you above the noise, above the